Chapter 90. You'll really wait for me? Gu Nianji stifled her sobs as she hung her head. Yes. Okay, I'll be quick. Give me a minute. Gu Nianji put down the phone and sprinted to the bathroom like a little firecracker. She turned on the hot water and hastily washed her face, then grabbed a towel to wipe her face as she ran back. Uncle Hua, are you still there? Gu Nianji quickly picked up the phone. Yes. Hua Xiaoheng flipped another page of the National Defense Briefing. Speak. Gu Nianji was disconcerted by Hua Xiaoheng's call and became a little timid. She didn't dare ask him any more personal questions and thought about it for a long time before asking, Uncle Hua, when are you coming back? Gu Nianji hadn't seen him in a long time and realized that she really missed him. Hua Xiaoheng stared at the National Defense Briefing and replied casually, I'll be back when I'm done with work. Gu Nianji opened her mouth but didn't ask any more questions. She had already said it was work, and Uncle Hua's work wasn't something he could just casually share with anyone. It was all classified. Gu Nianji was a little crestfallen. She rolled over and lay on the fluffy white woolen blanket. She looked up at the cream-colored ceiling and asked carefully, Then, can you come back in 2 weeks? Her vacation was only 2 weeks. It would be great if Uncle Hua could come back in 2 weeks. Hua Xiaoheng leisurely leaned against the sofa. His tall and burly body completely squeezed the spacious single-seater sofa. Depends. Hua Xiaoheng's hand paused and calmly flipped to another page of the National Defense Briefing. Gu Nianji couldn't help but let out a long "oh," her disappointment evident in her voice. What is it? Do you want me to come back? Hua Xiaoheng didn't even look up as he flipped through the National Defense Briefing page by page. He quickly skimmed through the recent major international exchange activities within the Empire's borders. Yeah, I haven't seen you in a long time. Gu Nianji muttered as she grabbed her little panda pillow from the bed and hugged it to her chest. Why do you want me to come back? You want to train early again? Hua Xiaoheng asked calmly. Gu Nianji was speechless. What? Train early in the morning? Okay, since we're back at the base, do a 10 kilometers cross-country run in the morning, 50 pull-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 target practice and 50 weights. Remember to complete them every day. Hua Xiaoheng mercilessly assigned her morning training tasks. Gu Nianji immediately sat up straight and said sternly, Uncle Hua, the air's been pretty bad lately. The pollution's been pretty bad, so I won't be going cross-country. If I get sick from running, I'll have to trouble Brother Qin. That's fine too. There's a treadmill on the 3rd floor in my gym. Remember to go to the gym to run every day. The treadmill will record the number of steps you run. I'll check when I get back. Hua Xiaoheng wasn't so easily fooled. Gu Nianji pursed her lips. I'm hungry. I'm going to have lunch. Talk to you later, Uncle Hua. She hung up. Hua Xiaoheng heard the sound of the phone being hung up and smiled slightly. He turned off his phone and prepared to head out for the meeting. Just as he was about to leave, his phone rang strangely again. It was the sound of an encrypted message coming in. He was slightly startled. In the supercomputer room of the Special Operations Forces base in Sea City, Zhao Liangzi looked at the data he had found and gasped. He picked up the phone and called Hua Xiaoheng. But the line on the other end was busy. Zhao Liangzi couldn't help but tap into the internal communication line to take a look. He discovered that the number on the other end was Hua Xiaoheng's cell phone number. He had been talking to his own internal line the entire time. The only person living in Hua Xiaoheng's quarters right now was Gu Nianji, who had come last night. Since he was on the phone with Miss Gu, Zhao Liangzi didn't dare interrupt. However, the information he had uncovered was too serious and he had to report it immediately. Zhao Liangzi thought about it and chose to send an encrypted message. A year's worth of customs container data seized in Sea City. There's a major discovery. There's more smuggled arms than expected. The Dufeng Mountain Resort Villa kidnappers only got the tip of the iceberg. The smuggling routes have been traced upwards. It's related to the Secret Service. We don't know if there's a mole or a setup. Hua Xiaoheng unlocked his phone and saw that it was an encrypted message from Zhao Liangzi. His expression didn't change as he read each line. He dialed Zhao Liangzi's number. Little Zay, what's going on? Hua Xiao. Zhao Liangzi hurriedly turned on his headset and answered the call. He kept downloading and storing data on his computer. I found the information you wanted. The kidnappers at Dufeng Mountain Resort Villa managed to get their hands on those foreign firearms. It was no coincidence. I found that a team of people from Sea City Customs were involved in this large-scale arms smuggling. I followed up and found that it's related to both the Secret Service and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's not surprising that it's related to the Secret Service, but what does it have to do with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? Hua Xiaoheng looked at the National Defense Briefing in his hand. His eyes stopped on a major international conference on the third page. This major international conference was the International Women's Commendation Conference that was about to be held in Sea City. It was sponsored by the United Nations Women's and Children's Rights Organization and honored women who had made significant achievements in various fields. It was equivalent to the Nobel Prize for Women. Famous female politicians, entrepreneurs, scientists, artists, philanthropists and celebrities from all over the world would be invited to Sea City for the conference and awards. It was one of the major international exchanges of the year for the entire empire. As expected, Zhao Liangzi said, "The International Women's Commendation Conference that will be held in Sea City soon is organized by the Empire's Ministry of Foreign Affairs under the auspices of the United Nations. The arms smuggling that we discovered this time is closely related to this international conference." Wu Xiaoheng's fingers tapped on the briefing. As expected, his intuition had always been accurate. The Secret Service was responsible for the security of these large-scale international events, while the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was responsible for the organization. "Tell me who from the Secret Service and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are involved. I want specific names and evidence." Wu Xiaoheng pressed the record button. Zhao Liangzi read out the names one by one. The highest-ranking officials involved were the Deputy Director of the Secret Service and the Deputy Representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to the United Nations. Wu Xiaoheng was no stranger to these names. He even knew a few of them personally. However, when it came to national interests, he would show no mercy, even if it was his own parents. Roger that. Wu Xiaoheng pressed the button to stop the recording and ordered Zhao Liangzi, "Immediately destroy the weapons warehouse in Sea City and seize all the smuggled weapons. Capture all the people involved, regardless of which side they are from, and have the Special Operations Forces arrest them all." Huh. Zhao Liangzi was a little troubled. The people who hid the arms are gangsters. It's easy to arrest them, but some of the people who facilitated it are people from within the government. If it's to set up a trap and arrest them, wouldn't it be, "Don't worry about it. After they're arrested, the expert who set up the trap will naturally come to me," Wu Xiaoheng said coldly. Wu Xiaoheng said coldly, "To set up such a heartless trap, I want to see how many brains they have." It was the second watch. Today was the third watch. "I'm asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. The first spiritual pet fate bestowed by the Yunhua Yueqing Alliance Master has arrived." It was the third watch at 6 in the evening. Chapter 91. Gu Nianji immediately felt refreshed after she hung up on Wu Xiaoheng. She stood up to stretch and paced around the bedroom a few times to stretch her muscles before entering Wu Xiaoheng's gym. There was a complete set of fitness equipment. Gu Nianji and treadmill had a feud for generations. She didn't expect to return to the base 2 years later and still be unable to escape this nightmare. She looked at the innocent treadmill with a dark gaze and flashed a small Swiss Army knife in her hand as she walked towards it step by step. 5 minutes later, Gu Nianji walked out of Wu Xiaoheng's gym with a victorious smile. She had secretly damaged the data cable of the treadmill inside the room. She had secretly poked it and damaged it. Gu Nianji happily walked into the bathroom to shower. Under the water droplets from the shower, she touched her arms with lingering fear. She had trained to the point where the muscles on her arms were showing. It wasn't beautiful at all. She didn't want the devil's training. Gu Nianji happily enjoyed her unexpected 2-week vacation at the base. She first went to the hospital with Chen Lai to visit Brother Li. Xiao Li was a bit surprised to see that she actually came to see him, but he was also very touched. He had protected so many people, but Gu Nianji was the only one who came to see him after he was in danger. Of course, although protecting those people was within the scope of his duty, people always had feelings. He didn't want to be treated like a disposable machine. Gu Nianji's arrival made Xiao Li very happy. Gu Nianji spent the whole day in his room helping him get food, picking out good films, watching the nurse change his dressing, and even helping him mail a few letters. Gu Nianji was very confused about this. "Brother Li, why don't you send an email or text message to your family?" Xiao Li leaned against the bed and watched a movie on his iPad as he said to her, "We can't have any social media accounts or use any social media apps. We can't even use email." Gu Nianji stared at him with wide eyes as if she didn't believe him. "Some of us have social media accounts and apps, but they're all necessary for our work and are completely monitored." Xiao Li smiled bitterly, "Don't tell Hu Xiao I told you. He can skin me alive." Gu Nianji was very happy to hear people talk about Hu Xiaoheng. She sat next to Xiao Li's bed and asked with great interest, "Are you willing to take this job?" To Gu Nianji, who was an internet child, it was unimaginable to live without the internet, social media accounts and social media apps. Xiao Li's ordinary face suddenly lit up. He nodded heavily. I love my job. Even if it means I have to hide behind the scenes for the rest of my life and no one knows what I've done, I won't regret it. Gu Nianji looked at little Li in fascination, but the image of Hua Xiaoheng in his special forces uniform appeared in her mind. Feng Yichen sat on the sofa at home with a bottle of wine in her hand. Her eyes were hazy with alcohol as she watched the television interview about the kidnapping at Dufeng Mountain Resort Villa. From time to time she would take a sip of wine. Ha ha, the Shenren sure is lucky. Even that didn't bring her down. Feng Yichen slammed the bottle on the floor and laughed hysterically. The wine in the bottle splashed everywhere, making a mess in her living room, but she was in no mood to care. Brother Biao opened the door and walked in. He smiled at her. Why are you drinking alone? I'm happy. Feng Yichen stood up drunkenly and threw herself into Brother Biao's arms. I'm happy, haha. I'm happy too. Brother Biao was genuinely happy. You're so smart. You sent those big circle boys to their deaths with just one little trick. Feng Yichen giggled and hiccuped. What do they have to do with me? Brother Biao, you're too kind. This isn't my doing, it's their own bad luck. You think I don't know? If you hadn't secretly called those families and asked them to urge the police to arrest them, those big circle boys wouldn't have been caught so easily. That's why you're so capable. Brother Biao patted her on the back meaningfully. Feng Yichen shuddered involuntarily. She hadn't expected Brother Biao to be watching her every move. He even knew that she had secretly reported to the Mei family, the Wang family and the Chao family. Feng Yichen didn't dare continue. She suppressed the discomfort in her heart and said gently, I did it for Brother Biao. Brother Biao doesn't like them, so I wanted to help him. As long as you're loyal to me, I'll never let you down. Brother Biao was overjoyed. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her. Feng Yichen groaned inwardly. Who the hell wanted to spend the rest of their lives with you? But she couldn't resist. The two of them kissed as they took off their clothes and stumbled towards the bedroom. Brother Biao's phone rang. He was a little impatient and didn't want to answer it. He took it out and saw that it was his confidant calling. He picked it up. You better have something urgent. Brother Biao. The cops found our warehouse. They took everything in there. What? Stand guard, I'll be right there. Brother Biao's blood pressure shot up. He pushed Feng Yichen away and ran outside. Brother Biao, don't come. The cops are already here to arrest you. Unfortunately, Brother Biao didn't hear the last sentence. He had just walked downstairs to the garage when a few armed SWAT officers walked up to him. They flashed an arrest warrant. Zhang Biao. You are suspected of smuggling and concealing firearms. You are now under arrest. Brother Biao knew he was done for this time. He roared, You want to arrest me? I'll kill you. He pulled his gun from his waistband, but was shot dead by the SWAT officers before he could remove the safety. Go get his mistress, Feng Yichen. A masked SWAT officer craned his neck upstairs. 4 or 5 people quickly took control of the building's elevator and staircase exits. 2 of them went upstairs to arrest Feng Yichen. Feng Yichen saw the armed police outside through the peephole. She was so scared her teeth chattered. Her hands trembled for a long time, but she couldn't open the door. The SWAT officers outside couldn't wait any longer. They shouted, Open the door. As they spoke, they kicked the sturdy mahogany door open. Feng Yichen was knocked to the ground. The SWAT officers held a gun to her head as they walked in step by step. A policewoman handcuffed her and took her away. The remaining officers searched the place and found something unexpected. They quickly sent it to the Special Operations Forces base. This operation was led by Zhao Liangze and carried out by the Special Operations Forces SWAT team. Lieutenant Colonel Zhao, Operation Flash has been completed. All firearms have been confiscated. The main culprit, Brother Biao, has been shot and killed. His mistress, Feng Yichen, has been arrested and imprisoned. The customs officers involved have been arrested. The Special Operations Forces had always been swift and decisive when it came to their work. Within 2 days, while Hua Xiaoheng was still in the capital for a meeting, all the people involved in the case in Sea City had been arrested, including some government customs officers. On this day, he had just walked into the conference room of the Ministry of National Defense when he saw the Deputy Director of the Secret Service and the Deputy Representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the United Nations call out to him sternly. Major General Hua, please explain your Operation Flash in Sea City. It was the 3rd watch. Today was the 3rd watch. Asking for monthly and recommendation votes. Good night, everyone. Chapter 92. Explain? Please explain why you want me to explain to you. Hua Xiaoheng said calmly as he strode towards the conference room. This was a high-level meeting of the Ministry of Defense, and the confidentiality requirements were very high. The deputy representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to the United Nations was not qualified to enter. The deputy director of the Secret Service, however, was qualified. When the two men followed Hua Xiaoheng into the conference room, the deputy director of the Secret Service entered, but the deputy representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was stopped by the guards outside. Deputy Director Su. The deputy representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs called out. Deputy Director Su turned around and said to the guard with a cold expression, "This is the deputy representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to the United Nations. Let him in." "I'm sorry, his security clearance isn't high enough." The electronic scanner at the door refused to let him in. The guard at the entrance of the high-level meeting room was not flexible at all, and actually allowed Deputy Representative Kang of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to enter. "You don't even listen to me?" Deputy Director Su's expression was fierce. "What's your name? Which department are you from?" Deputy Director Su, "It seems that not only did I offend you, but my soldiers also offended you?" Hua Xiaoheng turned around from his seat at the head of the conference room with one hand behind his back. His gaze was unfathomable as he patted the chair with the other hand. Although Deputy Director Su felt that he had done nothing wrong and that everything he had done was for the benefit of the empire, he was still sweating profusely at Hua Xiaoheng's cold glance. The Deputy Director of the Defense Department walked in and saw the tense situation at the door. He smiled and shook his head. He came over to smooth things over and said to Deputy Director Su, "Old Su, how did you offend our Major General Hua? TSK, you're really something." Xiaoheng has never been so angry since he was promoted to Major General. "It seems that I won't be able to help you this time. How about this? The security level of the conference room next door isn't that high, so Deputy Representative Kang can also enter. Let's talk inside." Deputy Director Su suppressed his anger and nodded, but requested that Hua Xiaoheng's immediate superior, General Ji of the Imperial Army, as well as Deputy Director Wu of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Speaker Long of the Senate, go to the small conference room next door to negotiate. The six of them closed the door of the small conference room and began to question Hua Xiaoheng about the recent lightning operation of the Special Operations Forces in Sea City. "Speaker Long, General Ji, I would like to ask Major General Hua 2 questions. First of all, the 6th Military Region's jurisdiction was clearly outside of the Empire's borders. Since when did the 6th Military Region have the right to intervene in Sea City's affairs? They really wanted to know why the operations forces were going to Sea City to arrest people. They even captured our own people. Is Sea City not part of our Empire's territory? Secondly, the arms smuggling in Sea City this time was a goldfish raised by our ministry and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs delegation to the United Nations. Our goal was to lure the snake out of its hole and wipe out the enemy in one fell swoop. However, Major General Hua's intervention has completely ruined our 6 months of hard work. The losses are incalculable. I demand a reasonable explanation from Major General Hua. If you can't satisfy us, please punish Major General Hua for overstepping his authority and give the Secret Service and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs an explanation." Deputy Minister Su of the Secret Service was furious. He had put in so much effort to raise these goldfish, but Hua Xiaoheng had interfered and ruined all his previous efforts. Speaker Long and General Ji looked at each other, then looked at Hua Xiaoheng. General Ji was the Minister of the Central Military, the highest military organization in the empire. He was also Hua Xiaoheng's direct superior. Someone had come to him to accuse Hua Xiaoheng of overstepping his authority. Although he didn't think much of it, he couldn't just ignore it. "Xiaoheng, please explain." General Ji clasped his hands on the conference table in front of him and looked at everyone in the small conference room. Hua Xiaoheng nodded. He could ignore other people's orders, but he couldn't ignore General Ji's. "Yes, General Ji." Hua Xiaoheng turned his head and fixed his gaze on Deputy Minister Su. "Deputy Minister Su, may I ask what's going on with the goldfish that you set up this trap?" Deputy Minister Su didn't want to talk at first, but with the Speaker of the Senate and the Supreme Commander of the Army looking at him, he had no choice but to speak. He could only suppress the anger in his chest and signal Deputy Minister Wu of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to explain. People from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs were always more eloquent. Deputy Minister Wu raised his head and looked at them with the whites of his eyes and nostrils. He said haughtily, "It's like this. Sea City will be hosting the International Women's Commendation Conference soon. Among the invited female leaders and representatives from around the world is a woman from Barbados who is a descendant of the Wuxia Empire. Her name is Gu Yanran. She has an unfathomable amount of wealth. Her net worth alone accounts for half of Barbados's GDP. Please simplify it. We don't have time to listen to your big talk. Wu Xiaoheng looked down at his watch impatiently. Deputy Minister Wu's pale face flushed red. He clenched his fists and glared at Wu Xiaoheng angrily. However, his frail body wasn't even half as tall as Wu Xiaoheng, so he was completely overwhelmed by his aura. He had no choice but to swallow his anger and quickly say, "It was this Chinese philanthropist who used the opportunity of coming to the empire for an international conference to work with us to eliminate the mercenaries who wanted to assassinate her. We helped her eliminate the mercenaries who wouldn't let go of her. In return, she transferred half of her net worth from Barbados to the Wuxia Empire to help the empire develop its economy and charity." Wu Xiaoheng looked up. His dark eyes were shockingly bright. He leaned forward and said slowly, "You're telling me that you smuggled firearms just to help a foreign woman eliminate mercenaries who wanted to assassinate her? What kind of logic is that? Forgive me for being slow-witted, but I don't understand the logic behind it." What's there to not understand? Deputy Minister Su of the Secret Service was getting impatient. We kept an eye on that group of mercenaries. They were the ones who smuggled this batch of firearms into the country. We only provided them with convenience and made them think everything was going smoothly. When they enter the country and pick up these weapons, we'll be able to bring them to justice. Slap. Wu Xiaoheng slammed the table and stood up. Ridiculous. Speaker Long and General Ji's expressions also darkened. The two old men glared at Deputy Minister Su and Deputy Minister Wu with uncontrollable anger in their eyes. Deputy Minister Su was stunned. He looked at Wu Xiaoheng and said, "Major General Hua, why are you so angry? Didn't I say that these mercenaries are under our control? This batch of firearms was only a temporary measure to gain their trust." A temporary measure? Wu Xiaoheng stood up and walked towards Deputy Minister Su. "Do you know that part of the firearms that you have under your control has already fallen into the hands of the criminals in Sea City? Our soldiers, police officers, and innocent citizens have already lost their lives. Now you're telling me that everything is under your control? Well, those who achieve great things don't bother with trifles. Some small losses are inevitable." Deputy Minister Wu of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs waved his hand dismissively. "As long as those mercenaries enter the country and get their hands on these firearms, shut up." Wu Xiaoheng turned around and grabbed Deputy Minister Wu by the throat with one hand. His expression was so cold that it made people's hearts palpitate. "I can't believe you came up with such a heartless idea. How much do you hate our country? Why would you bring these murderous mercenaries into the country? Don't you know how powerful they are? Once they get their hands on these firearms, they can start a civil war in our country." This was the first night watch. My dear friends, your monthly votes are amazing. It looks like I'll have to update 4 times in a row for 2 days in a row. The second night watch at 1 o'clock p.m. The third night watch at 6 o'clock p.m. The monthly vote at 8 o'clock p.m. Chapter 93. Major General Hua, you're being too alarmist. Deputy Minister Su of the Secret Service was displeased. "I've already said that we're keeping a close eye on them. The moment they cross the border and pick up these weapons will be the moment they die. Although some innocent bystanders may lose their lives in the process, it's all worth it for the sake of the empire's national interest." National interest? I didn't expect Deputy Minister Su to know about national interest. Wu Xiaoheng sneered as he let go of Deputy Minister Wu's slender neck. He wiped his hands with a tissue in disdain and didn't even look at the coughing Deputy Minister Wu. "Then may I ask, Deputy Minister Su, what is the national interest in your heart?" Deputy Minister Su opened his mouth to remind Wu Xiaoheng of the Chinese-American lady's immense wealth and the blueprints in her hands. However, when he saw Speaker Long and General Ji's equally cold eyes, he suddenly couldn't bring himself to say anything. He had thought that this was a very normal and righteous act. Why did it suddenly seem so wrong? Wu Xiaoheng pulled out a chair and sat down. He looked at Deputy Minister Su and Deputy Minister Wu coldly. "So, Deputy Minister Su and Deputy Minister Wu, for the sake of the best interests in your hearts, you didn't hesitate to bring mercenaries into the country and set up this plan to use the lives of your own people as bait to help the foreign tycoons eliminate their enemies. I have reason to suspect that you're working together from the inside and outside, and that you're spies who have infiltrated our government. Don't you think that the 6th Military Region should be involved in something like this? Nonsense. You're making irresponsible accusations." Deputy Minister Su and Deputy Minister Wu jumped up in unison and fought to profess their innocence. They had never done anything wrong to the country or its people. "You really didn't?" Hua Xiaoheng threw the list of smuggled weapons that Zhao Yangzi had sent to him on the conference table. Look at the weapons for yourselves. If these heavy weapons were to fall into the hands of those mercenaries, it would be a complete disaster for the citizens of Sea City. But we promised to help Ms. Gu get rid of these mercenaries. Deputy Minister Wu didn't even look at the weapons list. I don't care how difficult it is. We promised our friends, so we must do it. This is the magnanimity of a great nation. Bullsh *T. Hua Xiaoheng couldn't help but curse. What kind of Bullsh *T friend is this? Major General Hua, please don't curse. Although Gu Xiu is young and not well known in the empire, she has something that our empire urgently needs and has promised to provide it to us for free. Now that she is in trouble and has asked us for help, we can't just stand by and watch. Deputy Minister Su of the Secret Service looked at General Ji. We have to help her. I will immediately send the specific terms of the exchange to the military headquarters for your approval. General Ji frowned. Must you do this? Let me give you a friendly reminder. These foreign mercenaries are all good soldiers who retired from the regular army. The regular army may not even be a match for them, let alone the Secret Service. In short, the Secret Service made a mess of their own, and no one else has the obligation to clean up your mess. Hua Xiaoheng took out a cigarette and lit it with a lighter. He took a puff and fiddled with the lighter in his hand. His expression faded. But we have to help her this time, or we won't be able to get the blueprint of the A4 mini-nuclear engine. Deputy Minister Su finally shouted. She really has the blueprint for the A4 miniature nuclear engine? Even General Ji was shocked. Are you sure? We have experts who have seen half of the blueprint and confirmed it. Deputy Minister Su saw that General Ji had changed sides and wiped the sweat from his forehead. He glanced at Hua Xiaoheng with a bitter expression. But it's too late now. We don't know if those mercenaries already know about what happened in Sea City, so they might not take the bait. So you're saying that she will only give us the blueprint if we eliminate these mercenaries? Speaker Long lowered his head and took notes on his tablet notebook. He looked up at Deputy Minister Su through his reading glasses. Can you guarantee it? Deputy Minister Wu and I will guarantee it together. Deputy Minister Su of the Secret Service patted his chest. You guys signed the military agreement. I will handle these mercenaries. Hua Xiaoheng knew the Empire's desire for the small nuclear engine. He would never reject conditions that were beneficial to the country, but he had to set the rules of action. How are you going to handle it? Thanks to you, they might not even come. Deputy Minister Wu of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs sneered. Now you regret it? It's too late. How can the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Secret Service not have rules? Rules? You're using the lives of your own people as bait and you still have the cheek to talk about rules? Hua Xiaoheng didn't even look at him. He quickly played with his lighter with one hand. Then what do you think we should do? If you're not satisfied with our method, why don't you come up with a better one? Deputy Minister Wu felt that he had caught Hua Xiaoheng in the wrong and wanted to stomp on him again. Hua Xiaoheng smiled faintly. He looked up and tapped his fingers on the table. He blew out a faint white smoke ring. I said, you guys sign the military agreement and give me all the information you have on the mercenaries. We will take the initiative to attack. We don't have to harm the lives and property of our empire's people. We will directly annihilate the enemy outside our borders. Annihilate the enemy outside our borders. Major General Hua, don't do anything rash. Deputy Minister Wu of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was extremely nervous. We are a large and orderly nation. If you don't harm the lives and property of our empire's people, you can harm the lives and property of foreigners. I don't agree. Deputy Minister Wu, please be careful with your words. You are a diplomat of the Huaxia Empire, not a diplomat of another country. Hua Xiaoheng put away his lighter and extinguished the cigarette in his hand. He threw it into the ashtray. This meant that he wanted to end the conversation. However, Deputy Minister Wu was furious. He rushed in front of him and waved his fists. Major General Hua, in your eyes, our country's foreign policy only serves the interests of our country? Our country's soldiers also only care about the lives of their own citizens. In your eyes, our country's foreign policy also serves the interests of other countries? Our country's soldiers also sacrifice the lives of their own citizens for the safety of other countries' citizens. Hua Xiaoheng looked down at the skinny and shriveled Deputy Minister Wu. I bet you don't even believe that you're not a spy. If you were one of my soldiers, I would have shot you a long time ago. That way you wouldn't come out and embarrass yourself. Deputy Minister Wu was furious. How can you be so narrow-minded? The Huaxia Empire is a large nation. We Before he could finish, General Ji had already interrupted him coldly. Deputy Minister Wu, I didn't think that after a few hundred years, I would once again hear traitorous remarks like, measuring the Wuxia Empire's material resources to win the favor of the nation. In the eyes of our soldiers, diplomats like you are nothing more than traitors. The words of the highest general of the Imperial Army were even more of a blow to Deputy Minister Wu than Hu Xiaoheng's words. His flushed face suddenly lost all color. His face was pale and his legs were so weak that he almost knelt down. He stammered, I didn't mean it that way. It was the second night watch, and the monthly tickets had been delivered at 1,200 plus updates. The third night watch was at 6 in the evening. The fourth night watch was at 8 in the evening, and the monthly tickets had been delivered at 1,300 plus updates. A reminder, monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Chapter 94. The expression of Deputy Minister Su of the Secret Service also changed. He did not expect Deputy Minister Wu of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to say such a thing. He sighed heavily and glared at Deputy Minister Wu. Resigned to his fate, he took out a document from his briefcase and pushed it in front of Hu Xiaoheng. This is the information on those mercenaries. It would be better if you could eliminate them outside the borders. However, the difficulty is also greater. You don't have to worry about that. That's what we do. Hu Xiaoheng put away the document calmly and didn't take it seriously at all. Give me a digital copy. He would not completely trust the things that others took out. He would look for his own people to verify all the information related to this mercenary army and formulate a battle plan. Deputy Minister Su saw that he had a well-thought-out plan and thought that since he had been promoted to Major General at such a young age, he must have done a lot of such things. I'll send you an encrypted file when I get back. Pausing, he reminded Hu Xiaoheng, you only have less than a month. If you don't make it in time, you don't have to worry about that. From now on, this matter will be handled by the 6th Military Region. You have no right to interfere. Hu Xiaoheng stood up and glanced at Deputy Minister Wu. Since Deputy Minister Wu is deeply dissatisfied with me, I request that Deputy Minister Wu be sent to recuperate in order to prevent her from affecting our operations. Once we're done with the operation, we'll let Deputy Minister Wu come back to work. Mr. Speaker, General Ji, what do you think? This meant that he had lost trust in Deputy Minister Wu. General Ji considered the fact that this was the 6th Military Region's first mission since its establishment, so he should give Hu Xiaoheng more confidence. General Ji was also disgusted by Deputy Minister Wu's words and actions. He nodded slightly. Someone send Deputy Minister Wu to the military sanatorium to recuperate. When the event is over, bring him back with Major General Hua's order. Deputy Minister Wu's face turned even paler, and his whole body trembled like a sieve. He looked at General Ji pitifully, but seeing that he didn't even look up, he had no choice but to look at Speaker Long for help. Speaker Long ignored him. He looked at Hu Xiaoheng and nodded approvingly. Major General Hua is indeed thoughtful. Let's do this. The diplomatic team of the Senate will help you with the specific procedures. This was the final word. The Minister of Foreign Affairs still had to report to the Senate. As a deputy minister, the Foreign Affairs group of the Senate had full authority to send him to recuperate. It was already past 8 o'clock in the evening when he finished the meeting at the Ministry of National Defense. Hu Xiaoheng was still full of energy and did not feel tired at all. However, the elderly people who attended the meeting with him couldn't take it anymore. When they walked out of the meeting room, they almost needed someone to support them. There were simply too many things to do in the past few days. Just discussing the manpower arrangement had caused everyone to bicker every day. After greeting a few familiar faces, Hu Xiaoheng got into his car and called Zhao Liangzi. Xiaoze, bring your men to the capital. There's a mission. Mr. Hua, where was Big Xiong? Big Xiong, do you want to come along? When Zhao Liangzi received the call, he knew that it must have something to do with the smuggling of firearms. He rubbed his hands in anticipation of the big fight. Hu Xiaoheng hesitated. Let him stay. We can't slack off on Yanji's side. Yes, sir. Zhao Liangzi did not ask any more questions. He notified his team members and rushed to the imperial capital that very night. The next morning, their team began to look into the details of the mercenaries on the list according to the information given to them by the Secret Service. Thanks to the internet age, they could find a lot of insider information without leaving their homes. Of course, situations like the Japanese Masao Oda were rare. Nowadays, most people wanted to post everything they had online. Every day, from the moment they woke up in the morning to the moment they went to bed at night, they were posting all sorts of status updates. These statuses became the most basic data for intelligence work. From these statuses, they could analyze a lot of useful information. They could also dig into a person's background and life experience from their online friends. Even ordinary netizens without hacking skills were very good at digging into people's identities. Not to mention a hacker like Zhao Liangzi who had reached the pinnacle of his skills. They searched for 2 days and 2 nights and verified all the information on the mercenaries. Mr. Hua, the Secret Service gave us the information on 8 mercenaries. According to them, 3 of them are former members of the British Secret Service Special Forces, 3 of them served in the Russian Alpha Special Forces, and 2 of them are former members of the American Navy SEALs. Yes, and the truth? Hua Xiaoheng knew that the Secret Service's information was wrong when he heard Zhao Liangzi's words. The truth is, these 3 members of the Russian Alpha Special Forces actually served in the American Delta Force. We don't know why they were classified as the Russian Alpha Special Forces. Hua Xiaoheng took the information and looked at it. He twirled a thin lighter in his hand and tapped on the information. It's probably because the person who collected the information didn't know the difference. These 3 people are former members of the American Delta Force, but they were trained according to the Russian Alpha Special Forces. They are the imaginary enemies used by the American Special Forces during their exercises. Judging from the weapons, clothing, tactics, and combat skills they use, they are no different from the real Russian Alpha Special Forces members. Is that so? Zhao Liangzi suddenly understood. Just like the Red Army and Blue Army during our exercises, right? Yes, the Red Army is our army, and the Blue Army is the imaginary enemy during the exercises. This imaginary enemy could be the American Army or the Russian Army or the British Army or the French Army. The Blue Army's training and equipment are completely foreign methods and weapons to fight against the Red Army. This is what our ancestors said, know yourself and know your enemy and you will never be defeated. Got it. Zhao Liangzi was full of admiration for Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng had won every year in the World Special Forces competition, so he knew these special forces like the back of his hand. Similarly, when these foreign special forces soldiers retired and became mercenaries, Hua Xiaoheng was also the person who knew them the best. Find out where they live and prepare for action. Hua Xiaoheng only said one sentence and left the rest of the task to his subordinates. As one of the top leaders of the 6th Military Region, he didn't need to personally go into battle. He only needed to find talented people and then send them to suitable places to make use of them. After everything was prepared, Hua Xiaoheng quietly left the empire with the special forces and boarded a plane to go abroad. That day was the last day of Gu Nianji's 2-week vacation. She called Hua Xiaoheng from the base all afternoon but no one picked up. She had no choice but to find Yin Shixiang and said listlessly, "Brother Xiong, I have to go back to school. Can you take me back?" Yin Shixiang knew that Zhao Liangzi and the others had gone on a mission and was very worried about them. However, he was much more concerned about Gu Nianji than before, so he didn't complain about being left behind. Seeing that she was unhappy, he tried to comfort her. "Nianji, we're soldiers. You know what we do. We can be called upon at any time, so we can go at any time." Gu Nianji nodded and hugged her backpack. "I know, just let me be sad for a while. I'll be fine after this." Yin Shixiang was speechless. The little girl had grown up and was full of thoughts. It was so hard to take care of her. He dropped her off near the school, but Gu Nianji wouldn't let him in. She got out of the car at the entrance of C University and entered the campus alone. She had only walked a few steps with her suitcase when she heard someone call her from behind. "Gu Nianji? You're Gu Nianji, right?" Gu Nianji returned to see Ai Weinan in a fiery red dress and carrying a small sachet standing in front of her with a smile. It was the 3rd watch. The 4th watch at 8 p.m., and the monthly tickets were 1,300 plus updates. A reminder, monthly and recommendation tickets. Chapter 95. Of course Gu Nianji knew who Ai Weinan was, but what was so special about her that she had to know her? She looked Ai Weinan up and down and asked with a smile, "I'm Gu Nianji, may I ask who you are?" Ai Weinan choked and looked at Gu Nianji in shock. "You don't know who I am? Why would I know you?" Gu Nianji wasn't going to give the other any satisfaction. Ai Weinan hadn't expected this at all. She had thought she was a thorn in Gu Nianji's side, a thorn in her flesh. She didn't remember her? No way. Ai Weinan remembered Mei Xiaowen telling her that Gu Nianji was an orphan and had a distant uncle as her guardian. Her family wasn't very well off. Was that why she was clinging to Mei Xiaowen's rich family? Ai Weinan smiled graciously and said to Gu Nianji, "It's okay if you don't remember, let's get to know each other again." She held out her hand. "I'm Ai Weinan, Xiaowen's middle and high school classmate and desk mate." She then carefully looked at Gunyenji's expression and said in a particularly exaggerated tone of voice, "But don't misunderstand. Please don't misunderstand. Xiaowen and I are good buddies, there's nothing else. He loves to tell me whatever's on his mind, and I love to tell him whatever's on my mind, that's all." Gunyenji dragged her suitcase and stood on the campus's boulevard, looking at Ai Weinan like she was an idiot. She shook her head and turned a corner to walk around. A female classmate saw Gunyenji and quickly greeted her, then asked, "Who was that? So weird." Gunyenji laughed. "Who knows? She was so secretive I didn't even know who she was. The first thing she said was that she was the class rep's desk mate and they were like this and that, it made me feel awkward." "No way. Isn't that a declaration of sovereignty?" The female classmate knew Mei Xiaowen was courting Gunyenji and gave her a light shove with a smile. "What sovereignty? You're a law student, how can you use words like that?" Gunyenji giggled as she joked with her classmate and returned to her dorm. Ai Weinan's face alternated between red and white. Gunyenji's actions made her want to vomit blood. In the evening, C University students bustled back and forth. She stood awkwardly on the boulevard for a while, then remembered why she was there, and headed to Mei Xiaowen's dorm. There was a reason she mustered up the courage to come to C University to find Mei Xiaowen. News of C University's Class 1 and Class 2's mishap at the Dufeng Mountain Resort Villa had already spread throughout C City and the entire empire. The TV stations took turns to follow up, the national popular websites followed up with follow-up reports, and the forums and Weibo were in full swing. Everyone in their WeChat moments was sharing different versions of the crisis. With such a strong propaganda campaign, it was rare to find someone who didn't know about this. When Ai Weinan saw the news about Mei Xiaowen on TV, she couldn't sit still any longer. Mei Xiaowen looked much more haggard than before. It was said that he had been running a high fever ever since he came back. The kidnappers at Dufeng Mountain Resort Villa were extremely vicious and had killed many people. They had only been able to escape by sheer luck. If they hadn't been so lucky, if they hadn't been so vigilant, she might have been separated from Mei Xiaowen forever, never to see him again. Ai Weinan thought about it for 2 whole weeks, then finally decided to give it a try. Perhaps after trying they wouldn't even be able to be friends anymore. But if she didn't try, she would regret it for the rest of her life. She didn't want to regret it for the rest of her life. Ai Weinan took a plane back to C City. She arrived at Mei Xiaowen's home first, carrying bags of supplements. "Uncle, Auntie, how's Xiaowen?" Ai Weinan was very familiar with Mei Xiaowen's parents. The two families were family friends. Mei Xiaowen's mother's eyes were red. She took her daughter's hand and sobbed, "Weinan, thank you so much for coming to see Xiaowen. Oh, this really scared us to death." It's fine. Xiaowen is blessed by God. Look, isn't he fine? And he's even on TV. He looks more handsome than everyone else." Ai Weinan kept praising Mei Xiaowen's mother and won their approval. But when she asked about Mei Xiaowen's mother told her that Mei Xiaowen had already returned to school. Ai Weinan didn't say anything and rushed to C University. She hadn't expected to run into her rival in love, Gunyenji, at the school gates. But this girl, who looked to be 4 years younger than them, didn't seem to remember her at all. Ai Weinan's prepared speech was for naught. Ai Weinan stared at Gunyenji's back for a long time. When she was sure she had returned to her dorm, she turned to look for Mei Xiaowen in the boys' dorm. C University's rules were that it was difficult for boys to go to the girls' dorm, but it was easy for girls to go to the boys'. Ai Weinan registered at Mei Xiaowen's dorm and came looking for him. In the evening, shirtless boys were walking in and out of the boys' dorm. When they saw a girl go upstairs, the boys quickly slipped back to their dorms and shut the door. Ai Weinan walked down the hallway of the C University boys' dorm with a smile on her face. She arrived at Mei Xiaowen's dorm and knocked on the door. Strongman poked his head out and squealed when he saw it was Ai Weinan. "Wait until I get dressed." He was also shirtless, wearing only a pair of shorts and playing video games in the dorm. "Take your time, there's no rush." Ai Weinan smiled at the door. Strongman put on a t-shirt and raised his voice. "You're here for class rep, aren't you? But he's not in the dorm." "He's not in the dorm?" Ai Weinan was shocked. "Where did he go?" "I just came from his house. His parents said he came to school." "Where did he go?" "To stand guard in the girls' dorm, of course." Strongman laughed as he opened the door. "Did you forget? Class rep is chasing Yenji." Ai Weinan laughed heartily. "Then he's in luck. I saw Yenji returning to the dorm when I came in. The two of them should have met by now, right? Who knows? Hey, do you want to come in?" Strongman moved aside. "You still have your luggage?" AI Weinan spread her hands. I just got here. I haven't booked a hotel yet. I'm going to find some old classmates to sing all night. Do you want to join us? Strongman really wanted to go, but then he remembered that AI Weinan and Mei Xiaowen were high school classmates. Their old classmates must be from high school as well. There was no point in joining them. He shook his head with a smile. Thanks, maybe next time. AI Weinan took out a bag of local delicacies from Z City and gave it to Strongman. I brought this for you. I saw you liked this a lot last time. Oh, thank you. Weinan, you're the best. He praised AI Weinan as if she were a flower. She was the epitome of kindness. AI Weinan saw that Mei Xiaowen wasn't there and didn't go in. She turned and left C University. She made a few phone calls and found a dozen high school classmates. We're all graduating soon, so let's have a good gathering today. We won't go home until we're drunk. If you're drunk, go sleep in the room upstairs. I got 2 rooms here, one for the boys and one for the girls. AI Weinan was the host. She knew how to lighten the mood. A male classmate said, "Why don't we call class rep? It's not fun without him." That's fine too. You call him. AI Weinan said with a smile. It was the 4th update, and the monthly pass was 1,300 plus updates. Good night, everyone. Chapter 96. The people AI Weinan had invited to the Hotel KTV were all their high school classmates. Mei Xiaowen had been their class rep since junior high. Everyone was familiar with each other and knew that Mei Xiaowen loved crowds and organizing school activities. Seeing that no one objected, the male classmate picked up his phone and called Mei Xiaowen. At that moment, Mei Xiaowen and Gu Nianji were eating ice cream in a dessert shop on C University's campus. Gu Nianji had a box of Haagen-Dazs grape ice cream in front of her. She used a small spoon to slowly eat as she looked at Mei Xiaowen's pale face. You've lost weight. Where did you go? Didn't you rest well? Mei Xiaowen rubbed his chin. He didn't eat the ice cream in front of him. He asked for a cup of hot coffee. I didn't go anywhere for the past 2 weeks. I was sick at home. Otherwise I would have gone looking for you. You're sick? Gu Nianji froze. The spoon in her hand froze. What's wrong? Are you feeling better? I'm better now. It's just a fever. I'm probably tired and got caught in the rain. Mei Xiaowen reached out to hold Gu Nianji's hand. What about you? Are you okay? Gu Nianji looked delicate and soft, especially with her pointy chin, which always gave people the illusion that she was too fragile to stand up to the wind. She was actually very healthy. Chen Lai, who often gave her checkups, knew this best. Of course, outsiders wouldn't know. Gu Nianji withdrew her hand and propped her head on the table. She shook her head. I'm fine. I'm not sick. I was just really sleepy. I slept until noon the next day when I got home. When she woke up, she instinctively called Hua Xiaoheng, who was far away in the imperial capital. And then there was Hua Xiaoheng was gone for 2 weeks. He didn't call back, nor did he come back. Gu Nianji propped her head up absent-mindedly. She held a small spoon and stirred the ice cream in the tub. She almost turned the tub into a creamy paste. From Mei Xiaowen's angle, he could see the silhouette of Gu Nianji's long eyelashes from the side. They were thick and long, half covering her mesmerizing eyes. He couldn't tell what she was thinking. True beauties were always good-looking even when they were distracted. Mei Xiaowen stared at her with a smile until his phone suddenly rang. Both of them snapped back to reality. Gu Nianji immediately looked down at her phone and realized it wasn't her ringtone. Mei Xiaowen paused. It was his phone. The caller was a male high school classmate. Mei Xiaowen stood up and nodded at Gu Nianji. Nianji, I'll take a call outside. Gu Nianji tilted her head at him. Please. The dessert shop was actually quite quiet. Although it wasn't explicitly forbidden to make phone calls, it wasn't good to ruin the quiet environment. Mei Xiaowen walked out with his phone in hand. Class leader? What are you doing? The male student's voice came from the phone. Phew. Mei Xiaowen smiled and put his hands in his pockets. Why did you call me? It's like this, Weinan came to visit us from Z City. He invited a dozen of his high school classmates to karaoke. Everyone said we couldn't miss class leader, so I volunteered to call you. The male student was very enthusiastic. Class leader, everyone's looking at me. You can't not give me face. Also, we're graduating soon and everyone will be going their separate ways. Don't you want to get together? Mei Xiaowen knew that AI Weinan loved crowds and had been very popular in high school. That was why she could get so many classmates to karaoke with her so easily. He turned around and looked at Gu Nianji through the large glass window in the dessert shop. She was still supporting her head with her hand, but she wasn't stirring her ice cream anymore. How long are you guys going to hang out? I'll see if I have time. Mei Xiaowen didn't want to leave Gun Yanji and hesitated. Class leader. Just come over. What are you doing? If you have other classmates, bring them along. Weinan is paying, she said, the more the merrier. Mei Xiaowen saw that Gun Yanji was bored and wanted to take her out to have some fun. He agreed. Okay, where are you guys? Send me the address. The male student knew that Mei Xiaowen had a car, so he could just send the address. Mei Xiaowen received the address and saw that it was a hotel not too far from campus. He turned to walk into the dessert shop and asked Gun Yanji, Yanji, do you want to go karaoke with me? Gun Yanji sat up straight. But I can't sing. That's fine, I'm fine as long as I can sing. Mei Xiaowen reached out to pull her up. A group of my high school classmates are singing at a KTV near our campus. They asked me to go. Let's go together. Hearing Mei Xiaowen mention his high school classmates, Gun Yanji immediately thought of AI Weinan, whom she had seen on her way back to campus. AI Weinan was almost certain to be among the classmates who were singing. Gun Yanji didn't want to get involved with Mei Xiaowen's high school classmates. They were classmates, but she wasn't. She felt like a stranger among them. It was awkward. Of course, Gun Yanji hadn't thought about the main reason. She just subconsciously didn't want to see AI Weinan. Every time she saw the girl use the excuse of being a good friend to hide her feelings for Mei Xiaowen, Gun Yanji felt sick for her. Just say it out loud if you like someone, what's there to be embarrassed about? Mei Xiaowen was so gentlemanly and didn't eat people up. Gun Yanji despised him, but she only thought about it in her mind. She wouldn't say it out loud. She stood up and grabbed her phone. Shaking her head, she refused. Since it's a high school reunion, I won't go. Go ahead and remember to come back early. She reached out and gently brushed Mei Xiaowen's shirt, as if it was covered in dust. The dessert shop was actually very clean. Mei Xiaowen's snow-white t-shirt didn't have a speck of dust on it. Mei Xiaowen didn't insist. He held her hand and walked out with her. I'll take you back first, then go see them. These guys always cause a ruckus. I hope they don't go overboard today. Gun Yanji smiled and didn't say anything. She slowly walked back to her dorm room and waved at Mei Xiaowen as he drove away. When she returned to the dorm, her 3 roommates were quite surprised to see her. Why are you back so early? It's not even 9 yet. Gun Yanji grabbed her clothes and went to the bathroom to shower. She said, it's Xiaowen's high school reunion. He's leaving. TSK, a high school reunion. We haven't even gotten together with our college classmates yet. Little Temptress clicked her tongue and continued scrolling through Weibo to catch up on the trending topics. Gun Yanji took a shower and crawled into bed. She held her laptop and listened to music with her headphones as she revised her thesis. Before she knew it, it was almost 11 o'clock. The lights were about to go out when she remembered to look at her phone. Mei Xiaowen hadn't sent her a message. At the same time, in the hotel garden, AI Weinan called Mei Xiaowen out of the KTV room. She finally mustered up the courage to say to him, Xiaowen, there's something I've been waiting 6 years to say to you. This was the first update. My friend's monthly votes were awesome. Looks like I'll have to continue with the 4th update. The 2nd update at 1 p.m. was 1,400 monthly votes. The 3rd update at 6 p.m. The monthly vote at 8 p.m. was 1,500 monthly votes. Thank you, Rin Xiaoyao 2722 for tipping me yesterday. Chapter 97. The hotel's garden was special. It was enclosed in a glass greenhouse on the top floor. At night, in the garden on the top floor, one could see the bright starry sky outside the glass roof when they looked up. Flowers were blooming around them, and all kinds of tropical rainforest plants were full of vitality. There were a few artificial streams flowing on the ground, and there was an electronic simulation of the sound of water. Mei Xiaowen had his hands in his trouser pockets. He stood under a green guanyin. His gold-rimmed glasses were handsome and elegant. He was the kind of man that high school girls couldn't resist. AI Weinan no longer hid her love for Mei Xiaowen. Her eyes were full of love. She wrung her hands and looked up at Mei Xiaowen. Her voice was hoarser than usual. Xiaowen, you've been in my heart since 2nd year of high school. You've never left it. Mei Xiaowen sighed softly. His beautiful eyebrows furrowed behind his gold-rimmed glasses. He opened his mouth to stop AI Weinan from continuing. AI Weinan didn't care about anything else. She continued. I know you have someone else in your heart. I know you were with someone else. And I'm best friends with her. That's why I didn't do anything. I just stayed by your side. Every time you went on a date with her, she would tell me in detail. Every time you argued, she would cry to me. I can tell you without hesitation that every time she wanted to break up with you, I was the one who tried my best to persuade her to come back to you. Behind his gold-rimmed glasses, Mei Xiaowen's eyes suddenly widened. His serene smile cracked a little. He knew Ai Weinan was his first girlfriend's best friend, but he didn't expect them to be this close. Those breakups and reunions had always been a secret and sacred place in his heart. He thought it was a secret they shared. But to her, it wasn't a secret anymore. She could even share something like that with someone else. Anger rose in Mei Xiaowen's heart. His eyes dimmed, and his expression became more and more serious. Ai Weinan saw the change in Mei Xiaowen's expression. She changed the subject. Xiaowen, if you were still with her, I wouldn't be saying these things to you. Even if I loved you so much that I couldn't help myself, I wouldn't say a word. Mei Xiaowen lowered his head. His eyes fell to the floor between him and Ai Weinan. He could even see that Ai Weinan was wearing a pair of black, pointy high-heeled shoes. But what kind of person are you chasing now? Does your family know you're courting someone like that? Ai Weinan's voice carried a hint of reproach. I have my own pride. Since you have always been unwilling to face up to my efforts and care for you, I would rather not say anything and live like this for the rest of my life. But this time, when you ran into danger at Dufeng Mountain Resort Villa and almost lost your life, I suddenly realized something. If I don't tell you, I won't be happy for the rest of my life. Ai Weinan paused, then took a step forward and grabbed Mei Xiaowen's hand. She looked up at his downcast face expectantly. Xiaowen, give me a chance and give your happiness a chance too. Spend the rest of your life with me. You won't regret your choice today. Mei Xiaowen let out a long sigh as Ai Weinan grabbed his hand. He pulled his hand away and said in a low voice, Weinan, I've always thought of you as a good friend, but you... His words were like a slap to Ai Weinan's face. Sadness, disappointment, awkwardness, all sorts of emotions flashed through her heart. She clenched her fists tightly to prevent herself from backing down. Of course we're good friends, but there's no such thing as pure friendship between a man and a woman. Ai Weinan's eyes sparkled as she stared at Mei Xiaowen. Unless you're gay. But I really think of you as a good friend, the genderless kind. Mei Xiaowen hesitated for a long moment before speaking his mind. His words weren't just a slap, they were a kick to the heart. Ai Weinan's courage, which she had been building up for 2 weeks, was completely shattered. She puffed out her chest and yelled at Mei Xiaowen, I'm a woman. A woman. Do you see that? How could he treat her as a genderless friend? Her breasts weren't small either. She wasn't a C, but she was a B-. You know that's not what I meant. Mei Xiaowen looked away from Ai Weinan. You're her best friend, and I think of you as my best friend too. I didn't know about all the things you did for me in the past. I know now and I'm grateful. But thank you, I'm sorry. Thank you, I'm sorry. 6 years of love, all in exchange for a thank you, I'm sorry. Ai Weinan's fists loosened and tightened, then loosened again. Although she had been prepared for this outcome, she was still at a loss when faced with it. There was an old saying, a man chasing a woman is separated by a mountain. A woman chasing a man is separated by a thin veil. But to her it seemed to be the exact opposite. She had chased after Mei Xiaowen for 6 years, but she hadn't even reached the foot of the mountain. Xiaowen, tell me, what do I lack in comparison to them? My family background is better than theirs, my grades are better than theirs, and my feelings for you are deeper than theirs. Even if my looks and figure aren't better than theirs, they're not worse either. Tell me, what do you want? Ai Weinan knew she had completely lost, but she wasn't willing to accept it. She wanted to know why she had lost. She had thought about it for 6 years and still couldn't figure it out. Why didn't Mei Xiaowen love her? That first love was one thing, but now Mei Xiaowen wanted an orphan girl with no family background, and still didn't want her. Mei Xiaowen looked at Ai Weinan's hurt expression and couldn't bear it anymore. He reached out and tucked a strand of Ai Weinan's hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her face for a moment, then slowly moved away. He said quietly, Weinan, you're a very good girl. I'm sure someone will love you in the future. But we're really not right for each other. What's not right? Tell me, I'll change, okay? Ai Weinan missed the warmth of Mei Xiaowen's fingertips on her earlobe. She threw all caution to the wind and hugged Mei Xiaowen's waist, resting her head on his chest. Listening to his pounding heart, Ai Weinan closed her eyes and choked out, Fine, you don't have to love me, I don't blame you. But can you take me? I'll only give my virginity to the person I love the most. Mei Xiaowen was speechless. I don't want you to take responsibility, I won't cause you any trouble. Just think of it as a one-night stand with me. Tomorrow morning we'll go our separate ways. I'll never see you again and you'll never look for me again, okay? AI Weinan looked up at Mei Xiaowen, her eyes filled with despair. Really, I'll never use any means to drag you down. But for the sake of all the years I've loved you, give me a beautiful memory, okay? Let me have something to remember for the rest of my life, okay? It was the second night watch and the monthly ticket arrived at 1,400 plus updates. It was the third night watch at 6 p.m. The fourth night watch at 8 p.m. And the monthly ticket was 1,500 plus updates. Just a reminder, monthly and recommendation tickets. Chapter 98. Being hugged by a young girl, pouring out her love, and even expressing her willingness to offer her chastity to spend a night with him, no man would remain indifferent. Mei Xiaowen hadn't expected AI Weinan to be so bold and passionate. He froze as she held him firmly by the waist. He couldn't help but wrap his arms around her shoulders and pat her on the back. He really didn't love AI Weinan. There was nothing to explain. Actually, there were often no reasons for love or not between a man and a woman. Sometimes there was just no chemistry between two people, no matter how hard one party tried. Between a man and a woman, only love was love. Everything else was called unrequited love or unrequited love, not love between two parties. It wasn't that AI Weinan wasn't good, but she couldn't make Mei Xiaowen develop any impulsive feelings of love. In Western terms, there was no chemistry between two people, so they couldn't fall in love. But AI Weinan understood men very well. For men, even if they didn't love each other, sex was no problem. There was a saying in the West called ****K, referring to the kind of one-night stand that AI Weinan had requested. So this was the last step in her plan, and the only way to save herself from the worst. She made this request because she was confident that as long as Mei Xiaowen slept with her once, there would be a second time, a third time, feelings would sublimate into love through repeated one-night stands. Whether Mei Xiaowen believed it or not, AI Weinan believed it. Seeing that Mei Xiaowen hadn't pushed her away for a long time, AI Weinan thought he had acquiesced. She whispered, "I even got a third room here." She had originally told her classmates that she would get 2 rooms, one for the girls and one for the boys. She had actually secretly gotten a third room for herself and Mei Xiaowen. She wanted her first time to be perfect, without any regrets. She wanted Mei Xiaowen to be addicted to her and unable to give her up. Unfortunately, she had overestimated her charm. Mei Xiaowen's mind was filled with not only the unforgettable memories of his first love, but also Gu Nianji's large, unspoken eyes. He finally pushed AI Weinan away and smiled. "Weinan, your virginity should be reserved for the person who loves you the most. I don't love you, I can't sleep with you." He looked at his watch. "It's getting late, I have to go. You guys have fun, I'm leaving first." AI Weinan had been preparing for this for a long time. She had anticipated all sorts of scenarios, including the worst-case scenario of Mei Xiaowen rejecting her. But she hadn't expected him to reject her to this extent. Even though she took the initiative to throw herself at him and wanted nothing more than to throw herself at him, he still pushed her away. AI Weinan covered her face and cried as she watched Mei Xiaowen walk away. By the time Mei Xiaowen returned to school, it was already past 1 o'clock in the morning. The dormitory was already closed. He had to wake up the building manager to let him in. But he couldn't sleep at all. Today, AI Weinan mentioned the person who had been hiding in his heart for 4 years. He thought that he had already walked out of it. When he faced that person again, he could talk and laugh as if nothing had happened and treat it as a romantic past. But what happened tonight made him realize that he hadn't forgotten about her. His heart beat violently for a while at every mention of her. No one had ever given him this kind of feeling, not even Gu Nianji. Of course, Gu Nianji had touched him far more than other women. That was why he was determined to pursue her. Given time, when they had been together for a long time and their feelings had deepened, they might be able to erase the traces left behind by their first love. For now, it looked like they hadn't done that yet. Mei Xiaowen took out his phone and opened the Weibo account, Black Tea's Sky. It was a Weibo account they had shared when they were passionately in high school. Both of them had passwords and no other fans. They wrote on it for each other to see. Both of them were artistic youths. Those phrases and poems that expressed their love, those that recorded every state of their lingering past, were the best catalysts for their feelings. Mei Xiaowen entered the account he had memorized in the dark, but when he entered the password, he was shocked to find that he couldn't log in. Mei Xiaowen immediately sat up in bed. This password was only known to him and her. He had just logged in to see this Weibo account a while ago. It had only been a few months. How could the password have changed? Could it be that she was back? And the password had been changed. Mei Xiaowen's fingers kept trying all kinds of password combinations on the Weibo login page. In the end, he even used the password recovery function. But it was useless. There was no text message sent to his phone. This meant that all the passwords of the Weibo account had been changed. Mei Xiaowen was in a daze for a while. After the initial shock, he slowly calmed down. Looking at the Weibo account, he felt that he couldn't be 100% sure that she was back. Maybe the account had been hacked? This kind of thing happened all the time. Mei Xiaowen logged into his Weibo and directly searched for the Weibo account he shared with his first love, Black T's Sky. He found that there was a recent status on the Weibo account. Maybe the scenery in the distance isn't necessarily beautiful. Maybe the most beautiful scenery is right beside us. I'm sorry that I was frivolous back then and gave up the most beautiful scenery around me. Mei Xiaowen's hands shook violently. He couldn't believe his eyes. After 4 years he saw her again. Seeing this latest Weibo post, Mei Xiaowen was sure that the Weibo account hadn't been hacked. She had changed the password. Come to think of it, he had posted a lot of content on the Weibo account over the past 4 years, all for her to read. After the breakup, he didn't know if she would come back, nor did he know if she would read it. But every time he thought of something he would post it. He didn't care even if he was the only one reading it. It was only after he made up his mind to pursue Gunyanji that he rarely logged into the Weibo account he shared with his first love. Tonight, when AI Weinan mentioned it, he remembered to check it again. He didn't expect to discover the truth that kept him up all night. He hesitated for a long time. His fingers swiped over the private message for a long time, but in the end he resisted. She was the one who left. If she still had feelings for him, she should be the one to look for him. Mei Xiaowen didn't fall asleep until it was almost dawn. It was almost noon when he woke up the next day. He casually picked up his phone to look at it. He actually saw a few messages from Gunyanji in the past few days. They had all been sent this morning. He had been sleeping and missed them. Mei Xiaowen hurriedly called her. It only rang once before she picked up. "Xiaowen, you're awake?" Gunyanji's cheerful voice sounded on the other end of the line. "I heard from Strongman that you slept very late last night?" This was the third watch. There was a fourth watch at 8 p.m. Monthly votes plus 1,500. Just a reminder, monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 99. Gunyanji's cheerful voice woke Mei Xiaowen up from his slumber. He liked her voice very much. Every time he heard her speak, he couldn't help but pay full attention, for fear that he would miss a single word. "Yeah, the downstairs was locked when I came back yesterday. I woke the building manager up to open the door for me, but she didn't like me." Mei Xiaowen's voice was still raspy as he slowly sat up on the bed. Gunyanji heard that Mei Xiaowen had come back last night instead of hanging out with his high school friends. She secretly gave him a thumbs up in her mind. "It's already noon, are you hungry? I'll bring you lunch." Gunyanji was in a good mood and wanted to repay Mei Xiaowen. After all, Mei Xiaowen had insisted on bringing her breakfast and eating lunch and dinner with her for the past 2 to 3 months. Even if she was returning the favor, she still had to give back to society once in a while. Mei Xiaowen hadn't expected Gunyanji to offer to bring him lunch either. He was touched and said slowly, "Does this count as waiting for the clouds to disperse to see the moon?" Gunyanji laughed. "Ah, you're overthinking it. Aren't you going to eat lunch?" "Of course I am. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you to bring me lunch. I must eat." Mei Xiaowen rolled out of bed and realized he was the only one in the dorm. He lazily slipped on his slippers and found a t-shirt to wear. He opened the door for some fresh air and saw AI Weinan standing at the door. Mei Xiaowen froze and couldn't help looking at the number on the door. That's right, this was his dorm room. AI Weinan was also carrying a plastic bag containing the food she had brought from the hotel. "I know you haven't eaten." AI Weinan picked up the bag graciously. "Go ahead, these are your favorite dishes." Mei Xiaowen hadn't expected AI Weinan to be so persistent. He sighed and shook his head. "Why do you have to do this?" "What?" "Don't overthink it. I've completely thought it through this time. I only want to be friends with you." AI Weinan patted his shoulder. "Even though you rejected me last night, now that I think about it, I'm very grateful you did. Otherwise my husband would have a knot in his heart and I'd regret it for the rest of my life." Mei Xiaowen smiled and nodded. "It's good that you've thought it through." Then he added jokingly, "That's right, a good girl like our Weinan has a long line of suitors out there. You shouldn't expect too much from her." "Yeah, I won't ask for someone like class rep in the future." AI Weinan tilted her head and gave him a small smile. She looked a little charming. Mei Xiaowen smiled and patted her shoulder. He sat down at the table and watched as AI Weinan took out a box of vegetables from the bag and placed it on the table. She also arranged disposable chopsticks for him. Mei Xiaowen was famished. Seeing that it was all his favorite dishes, he picked up his chopsticks and took a few bites. Gu Nianji stood at the door for a long time with the food she had bought from the cafeteria. She knocked on the door and smiled. "Huh, you've already eaten?" AI Weinan turned around and saw that it was Gu Nianji. She said enthusiastically, "Nianji? Come in, come in. Xiaowen was just talking about you. Who would have thought that speaking of the devil would bring him here?" Gu Nianji's lips curved into a smile. She walked in and placed the boxes in front of Mei Xiaowen. "I didn't know you already had food, so I bought some for you. You can have it if you want, or give it to Strongman if you don't. He'll eat anything." Mei Xiaowen blushed. He shouldn't have eaten AI Weinan's food. She had said that Gu Nianji would bring him food, but he had eaten it. It was disrespectful to Gu Nianji in the first place. "I'm starving, hurry and give it to me." Mei Xiaowen thanked Gu Nianji with more enthusiasm than usual. He opened the two boxes. AI Weinan looked at them with a smile. "Did you buy them from the cafeteria?" She shook her head. "Xiaowen only eats beef. He rarely eats pork. Also, he only eats wild shrimp and crabs. He doesn't eat farmed ones." Gu Nianji couldn't help but roll her eyes internally. What a problem. Was this mother's tone about to ascend to the heavens? And Mei Xiaowen, he also had a lot of problems. Fresh seafood was fine, but he wanted to eat wild and not farmed. Was he bullying her because she didn't know the difference between wild and farmed? "Oh," Gu Nianji said to Mei Xiaowen, "Xiaowen, this isn't a good idea. The seawater is heavily polluted with heavy metals. Wild shrimp and crabs have a lot of heavy metal deposits. Don't eat wild shrimp and crabs in the future. Remember to eat farmed ones. I know a place in Sea City that produces very good farmed shrimp and crabs. They're usually specially supplied to various government agencies. It's much better than eating wild shrimp and crabs of unknown origin." Every word was a direct contradiction to what AI Weinan had just said. AI Weinan blushed, but was too embarrassed to argue with Gu Nianji in front of Mei Xiaowen. She could only giggle. "I didn't think Nianji knew about specially supplied." Gu Nianji regretted her words as soon as they left her mouth. She hadn't even officially agreed to be Mei Xiaowen's girlfriend. Why did she have to act like she was jealous? She was making a fool of herself. The only happy person in the dorm was Mei Xiaowen. The fact that Gu Nianji was jealous meant that he was starting to enter her heart. His hard work over the past few months hadn't been in vain. He placed the food Gu Nianji had brought in front of him and smiled. "I'll eat it all, I'll eat it all. I'm so hungry I can eat a cow." "What's this?" Gu Nianji chuckled. "Take your time then. I'll be going." She turned to leave. She was filled with regret. She shouldn't have softened and brought Mei Xiaowen food. Mei Xiaowen and AI Weinan were clearly closer than before. What was wrong with her? Gu Nianji's expression darkened the moment she left Mei Xiaowen's dorm building. AI Weinan saw Gu Nianji leave. Her heart skipped a beat. She said to Mei Xiaowen, "You eat, I have to go too. I'm flying back to campus today. Do you want me to take you?" Mei Xiaowen gulped down his food. "Wait for me, it'll be ready soon." "It's fine, you eat. You've lost so much weight. If Hongcha saw you, she'd be heartbroken." AI Weinan suddenly mentioned Mei Xiaowen's first girlfriend, Jiang Hongcha. Mei Xiaowen choked on his food and began coughing violently. AI Weinan felt better when she saw Mei Xiaowen's reaction. She had lost to Jiang Hongcha and accepted it. But Gu Nianji, was she worthy? AI Weinan hurried down the stairs and finally caught up with Gu Nianji halfway down the stairs. "Nianji, Nianji, wait." AI Weinan ran up to her, panting. Gu Nianji didn't want to wait, but her classmates kept glancing at her and AI Weinan's loud voice. She couldn't pretend she hadn't heard. She stopped and turned to look at her. "What else do you want?" The fourth installment of the monthly ticket arrived at 1500. Good night, dear friends. Chapter 100. Nianji, Nianji, you're walking so fast that you can't even hear me. Are you really mad? AI Weinan saw that Gu Nianji had finally stopped and hurried to stand in front of her. Gu Nianji shook her head coolly. "Classmate, we really don't know each other that well. Please don't talk to me like that, okay? I haven't seen much of the world and I can't handle your familiarity." AI Weinan's face reddened even more. Luckily, she had rushed to catch up with Gu Nianji and was already flushed. No one could tell. "Don't be mad, okay?" AI Weinan whispered to Gu Nianji, her tone sincere. "Please don't misunderstand, Xiaowen does have someone in his heart, but it's not me." I'm the same kind of person as you, that's why I'm reminding you. Don't be prejudiced against me, I've never been your opponent. Your opponent is someone else. Gunyanji looked up at Ai Weinan and suddenly felt sorry for her. She had ruined herself for a man who didn't love her. Ai Weinan's words were meant to drive a wedge between Gunyanji and Ai Weinan. When the time was right, Gunyanji would make a scene with Mei Xiaowen sooner or later, and Ai Weinan would watch from the sidelines. He was just a man, was he worth all this scheming? Gunyanji realized she didn't understand. What was love? Ai Weinan was willing to throw caution to the wind, and create the right conditions to do so. Was that love? She and Mei Xiaowen didn't seem to have such a strong sense of possessiveness and exclusivity. Gunyanji looked at Ai Weinan, confused. She stared at Ai Weinan's red lips, and her mind began to wander. Nyenji, I'll tell you the truth, Xiaowen and I were classmates for 6 years and deskmates for 3. He was our class rep, he was handsome, had good grades and had a good family background. He had many admirers and I won't deny that I had feelings for him, but when he fell head over heels with my best friend, I quietly quit. Ai Weinan's eyes reddened as she spoke. Her words were 70% true and 30% false. She had unknowingly moved herself. They were each other's first love. You know, no matter men or women, first love is always different. Xiaowen is a sentimental man. Someone like him will never forget his first love. Gunyanji, Ai Weinan wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm very familiar with their feelings. I also know that they have a common Weibo account called Black Tea Sky. I suggest you check it out when you have time. You don't need me to say anything to understand how passionate and infatuated two people are in love. Gunyanji snapped back to reality and asked Ai Weinan, did they break up? Ai Weinan was surprised. Yes, they broke up, but Xiaowen's heart. How would you know what the class leader is thinking? Are you a roundworm in his stomach? Gunyanji frowned slightly. She didn't want to be led astray by Ai Weinan again. I'll ask you again. When did they break up? We split 4 years ago when we graduated from high school. Then my good friend Jiang Hongxia went abroad to study music and Xiaowen stayed to study law. Ai Weinan was stunned. You really don't mind? That's fine. They broke up 4 years ago, and you're still trying to stir up trouble and make up stories about how much they love each other? Don't you think it's ridiculous? If they really loved each other that much, why did they break up all those years ago? It's just studying abroad. I can't see how two people who love each other can't even overcome such a small obstacle. Gunyanji finished speaking and looked Ai Weinan up and down. From what I see, you just can't bear to see someone else be with the class leader, right? You've really misunderstood, I'm not? Ai Weinan realized she couldn't win against Gunyanji in an argument, and was eager to defend herself. Gunyanji didn't bother with pleasantries. She said sarcastically, fine. You really worry too much about the class leader's love life. People who don't know better would think you're his mother, not his classmate. Ai Weinan could hear the sarcasm in Gunyanji's tone. She pursed her lips and smoothed her long hair. She said dryly, I don't care what you think of me. You don't understand how much I love him. As long as he's happy, I'll be happier than anyone else. Love isn't possessive. Why are you telling me all this? Proselytizing? You're a law student, don't you know that proselytizing in a non-religious setting is illegal? Gunyanji interrupted Ai Weinan. She looked up at the avenue in front of her. She said dryly, I don't understand your feelings. For me, if I love him and he loves me, then no one can separate us. But if he doesn't love me at all, I'll walk far away. I'll never cling to him. I won't stay by his side as a friend and ruin his life in any way I can. Ai Weinan understood now. She looked at Gunyanji, her eyes suddenly sharp. You don't love Xiaowen. If you loved him, you wouldn't be so carefree. You're not me. How do you know what I'll do? Gunyanji finally couldn't help but roll her eyes at Ai Weinan. She said dismissively, I'll say it again. You don't have to worry about other people's business. Don't you think you're being a busybody? She walked away in a hurry. Ai Weinan stood on the avenue of the C University campus. She watched Gunyanji's figure disappear at the end of the avenue. The midday sun shone through the gaps in the leaves. It cast speckles of light on the avenue, like a shadow on her mind. Ai Weinan smiled slightly. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. Red tea? It's Weinan. When's your flight? I'll pick you up at the airport. Gunyanji returned to her dorm. She was disgusted by what had just happened. Mei Xiaowen called her twice in a row, but she didn't pick up. She went to the library alone to do the final edits on her thesis. She didn't finish the first version until it was almost evening. Hijichu had already urged her several times to read her graduation thesis. She found Hijichu's email and sent the first draft of her graduation thesis to him. Not long after the email was sent, she received a text from Hijichu. She wasn't in a hurry to return to her dorm. She carried her laptop bag and walked to the lawn outside the library to sit cross-legged. She bathed in the afterglow of the setting sun and texted Hijichu. Professor He, you've just finished your thesis? Gunyenji, yes, a fresh first draft. Please comment, Professor He. Oh, intersection. Oh, Professor He. When is the thesis defense? Gunyenji, mid-June, probably around the 15th. Professor He, it's only a few days. I'll edit it and send it back to you as soon as possible. Gunyenji, thank you. Thank you. Professor He, you're my savior. Professor He, Gunyenji, I'm just kidding. Professor He, you don't mind, right? Professor He, cut the crap. Do you have a passport? Hurry up and get a visa to the United States. I got you a chance to intern at the U.S. Congress. You'll have 6 months of free time after graduation. You can intern at the U.S. Congress. This was the first chapter. My dear friends, the monthly votes were too awesome. I still have to continue 4 chapters. I've run out of drafts, but for the monthly votes, I'll go all out. The second chapter at 1 p.m. Monthly votes of 1,600 plus updates. The third chapter at 6 p.m. The monthly votes of 1,700 plus updates at 8 p.m. Let me remind my dear friends about the monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 101. Gunyenji looked at her phone and couldn't believe her eyes. Wasn't Professor He being too nice to her? Gunyenji froze for a long time before carefully texting, Professor He, I won't be 18 until the second half of the year in October. Before that, I need a guardian to accompany me abroad. Hijichu was on the highway to the Imperial Capital Airport. He sat in the back seat of a luxurious Rolls-Royce, his tall body wrapped in a dark blue casual suit. His thin lips were tightly pursed, and his tall nose was tall and straight. His shimmering, almond-shaped eyes were intoxicating with a hint of red. He looked like he had been drinking and was a little tipsy. He held the phone with one hand, his slender fingers flying across the screen as he typed out a text without hesitation. Ask your guardian to give up temporary custody. Gunyenji's brows furrowed. Interning at the U.S. Congress was a job that even students from established Ivy League law schools flocked to. Not to mention students from the Empire. This was a rare opportunity. When the news of Hijichu recruiting master's students spread to their school, everyone was excited. It was all because of Hijichu's special status. Studying law with a tutor like him could save 20 years of hard work. Although Gunyenji was young, she had experienced a lot more than her classmates. She was always suspicious of such a pie that seemed to fall from the sky. Most things that were too good were not true. Gunyenji thought about it for a while and decided that she should discuss this matter with Uncle Huo first before replying to Professor He. Professor He might have good intentions, but she had to be cautious. After the 2 recent events, she was a little paranoid. So she texted Hijichu back. Gunyenji. Thank you for your kindness, Professor He, but I still need to discuss this with my guardian. Hijichu stared at Gunyenji's text and gradually came to his senses. He put a hand to his forehead and rested his elbows on the side of the car window. He closed his eyes and sighed quietly, then suddenly smiled. His expression was as cold as ice, and the brilliance of his smile was like a bolt of lightning that illuminated the dark car. When Shuyi, who was sitting next to Hijichu, was shocked speechless by his radiance. She hurriedly turned her head away and suppressed her pounding heart as she looked at the night view outside the window. The street lights on both sides of the highway flashed past his eyes, leaving a long arc in his retina that he could not see the end of. Hijichu knew that Gunyenji had her suspicions. He rubbed the space between his brows, and his cool voice had a hint of a smile in it. Little girl, you're full of drama. When Shuyi, but I drank too much. Hijichu looked down at the text he had sent to Gunyenji and shook his head. He didn't think it was appropriate. He tapped his finger on the phone screen twice and replied to her, Don't force yourself. I only have 2 slots. If you want to go to my teaching assistant to sign up and take the exam. It's a fair competition. Gunyenji hesitated as she watched the opportunity slip away. She quickly replied, Got it? I'll get back to Professor He as soon as possible. Then there were no more messages. Hijichu put away his phone and threw it on the car seat. He closed his eyes and clenched his teeth tightly. His temples were throbbing with pain. Although when Shui was looking out the window, she kept a close eye on He Jichu from the corner of her eye. She saw that he had ended the call and frowned. She quickly took out a bottle of iced milk from the small fridge in the car. Professor He, this is to help with the hangover. Milk could protect the stomach lining and reduce the absorption of alcohol. He Jichu waved his hand and frowned. It smells like beef. Change it to something else. When Shui quickly switched to iced tea. This will help with the hangover too. He Jichu looked down and drank a few sips of iced tea in Wen Shui's hand. He chewed on a piece of mint-flavored gum and his intense headache finally subsided. Wen Shui naturally pressed her hand on He Jichu's head and massaged his scalp. She whispered softly, "What's wrong? It's such a good opportunity. Gun Yinji doesn't want to go?" "Yeah." He Jichu didn't really care. "If she doesn't go, someone else will. When we get back to the United States, announce this news on the website of the B University Faculty of Law. Let everyone sign up and take the entrance exam. I don't want people to accuse me of favoritism." Wen Shui looked down speechlessly. Wasn't he being forced to be fair because of favoritism? The Rolls-Royce soon arrived at the Imperial Capital Airport. Several people in suits and leather shoes were already waiting there. When they saw them get out of the car, they immediately came up to greet them. They clustered around He Jichu and Wen Shui as they walked towards the VIP passageway. Half an hour later, they had already boarded a flight to the United States. "Professor He, how are you going to respond to the invitation to the International Extraordinary Women's Awards Conference in Sea City in a month?" Wen Shui was He Jichu's teaching assistant and also his secretary. She helped him with these daily affairs. He Jichu closed his eyes and said impatiently, "Do you have to ask me about this? Since when did I become a performer? Only an entertainer would go around looking for opportunities to be exposed. But we have a lot of clients attending the awards conference this time." Wen Shui was a bit hesitant. "The institute specifically called you several times to ask." He Jichu pursed his lips tightly. After a while he said dryly, "Then you go." He glanced at Wen Shui. "You're a woman, so it's more appropriate for you to go." Wen Shui didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Of course I appreciate Professor He's kindness. Okay, I'll go on Professor He's behalf." He Jichu didn't say anything, so it was tacit agreement. Soon the roar of the plane sounded and it took off. The lights in the first-class cabin dimmed. Wen Shui looked out of the window beside her and saw the bright lights of the imperial capital. It was a bustling and resplendent land surrounded by mountains. It was a beautiful sight to behold. Gun Yinji sat on the grass in the Sea University library until it was dark before lazily getting up to leave. She hesitated for a long time before calling Yin Shixiang. As she walked, she asked, "Brother Xiong, I hope I'm not disturbing you?" "No, not at all." Yin Shixiang had already finished dinner and showered. He was sitting on the sofa with his laptop, ready to call Zhao Liangzi. He was very concerned about the group of brothers on the mission. Hua Xiaoheng had just left the country with them, so they should have settled down by now. The 8 mercenaries on the list were senior employees of the Whitewater Security Group in Europe. 3 lived in Prague, the capital of the Czech Republic, 4 in Vienna, Austria, and 1 in Luxembourg. Because this was the 6th Military Region's first operation after its establishment, Hua Xiaoheng decided to personally lead the team to Europe to personally organize and coordinate the operation. This was the second monthly pass of 1,600 plus updates. At 6:00 p.m. the third watch. At 8:00 p.m., the monthly pass of 1,700 plus updates. Let me remind you of your monthly and recommendation votes. Chapter 102. Gun Yinji wore her headphones and backpack as she turned onto the path back to her dorm. It was dark and there weren't many students on the path. However, she was familiar with this path over the past 2 months and wasn't afraid. "Yinji, have you had dinner?" Yin Shixiang crossed his legs on the coffee table as he opened the special software to connect to Zhao Liangzi. Gun Yinji shook her head. "Not yet. There's something I want to discuss with Brother Xiong." Yin Shixiang suddenly became nervous. "What is it? What happened?" Gun Yinji could hear the sudden seriousness in his voice and couldn't help smiling. "Brother Xiong, don't be nervous, it's about my school." "Haha, I'm not nervous, what are you talking about?" Yin Shixiang teased Gun Yinji but kept looking at his watch, anxiously waiting for Zhao Liangzi to appear. Gun Yinji looked up ahead, the dorm building was already in sight. A few couples smiled as they walked past her. Gun Yinji could only lower her voice. "Brother Xiong, can my passport still be used?" Yin Shixiang asked. "Why do you ask?" Gun Yinji had gone abroad with Hua Xiaoheng before, so she had a passport. However, she was a minor and her passport was only valid for 2 years. It should have expired by now. It's like this, Professor He from the B University Faculty of Law gave me a chance to intern at the US Senate for half a year. You know, I can only start my master's program next spring, so I have half a year of free time. Gu Nianji really wanted this opportunity but was very obedient to Hua Xiaoheng. If Hua Xiaoheng didn't let her go, she definitely wouldn't go. She asked Yin Shixiang because she wanted Hua Xiaoheng's opinion. She knew Yin Shixiang would definitely tell Hua Xiaoheng. After all, Hua Xiaoheng was her guardian and the only person she could completely trust. Yin Shixiang stammered and couldn't immediately give a definite answer. He hummed and said, "Let me think about it first. I'll see if your passport can still be used. If it can't, I'll pick you up this weekend to apply for a new passport. Even if you don't intern at the US Congress, it'll be convenient to travel abroad during the summer." Gu Nianji happily agreed and hung up the phone. After walking out of this small path, the view before them suddenly widened. The dormitory area appeared before her. It was early evening and students were walking in and out of the dormitory building. Every dormitory had a light on, and it was the most popular place in the school. Gu Nianji walked to her dorm and, as expected, saw Mei Xiaowen's Buick. When Mei Xiaowen saw that she was finally back, he hurriedly opened the door and walked over to her. He very naturally helped her take off her backpack and said, "Where did you go? I've been looking for you all afternoon." Gu Nianji pointed at her backpack. "I'm carrying my laptop. Where else can I go? In the library?" Mei Xiaowen smiled good-naturedly. "I haven't had dinner yet. Have you? Accompany me to eat." Gu Nianji hadn't had dinner yet. She was so excited by Professor He's text message that she didn't feel hungry at all. After more than an hour, she finally felt a little hungry. "Let's go to the restaurant we always go to." Mei Xiaowen took her hand and led her into the car. He walked to the driver's side and started the car. Gu Nianji was also tired and didn't want to waste any more time. She fastened her seatbelt and said listlessly, "Class rep, it's not good if the other students misunderstand." "Misunderstand? What misunderstand?" Mei Xiaowen looked at her with a smile. He thought she was especially cute when she pouted and couldn't help but want to rub her head. "What's going on in that little head of yours? Didn't I tell you a long time ago that there's nothing going on between me and AI Weinan? We haven't been together for so many years, there's no way we could be together. Also, the girl I like isn't her type." Gu Nianji's interest was suddenly piqued. She tilted her head and looked at Mei Xiaowen from the corner of her eyes. "Then what kind of girl do you like?" "The girl I like the most has to be able to connect with my heart. There are a lot of things I don't need to say for her to understand. Just one look and we can connect," Mei Xiaowen said with fascination. The corners of Gu Nianji's mouth twitched. "Why didn't you say you wanted to find an ET? Not only can they connect but they can also read your mind and see your brain. Why aren't you talking?" Mei Xiaowen glanced at Gu Nianji. He thought she was going to take advantage of the situation and ask if she was his type. Gu Nianji smiled. "Class rep standards are so high, I'm too scared to ask." She was the type of person who jumped out and said anything was fine when asked what they liked to eat during a gathering. Actually, this type of person was ridiculously picky. Mei Xiaowen snickered. "Don't be scared. I'm just saying it casually, it depends on the person." Gu Nianji replied dryly. She still didn't ask as Mei Xiaowen had expected. Mei Xiaowen had no choice but to back down. "If it's you, Nianji, I don't care even if we can't connect. So you see, it's not up to me to decide what kind of girl I like. If I meet her and like her, then all conditions are off the table. Only when he didn't like her or didn't like her enough, would he haggle over all sorts of conditions." Class rep sure knows how to talk. Gu Nianji clapped. "I wonder how many girls will fall for you with those words." "Really? What about you, Nianji? Have you fallen for me?" Mei Xiaowen asked proudly. He had one hand on the steering wheel and the other on the side of the window. He looked very confident. "Ah, class rep, how can I answer you so bluntly?" Gu Nianji slyly dodged the question. "Girls should be more reserved, right?" She looked out the window. We're here. Hurry up and turn in." Mei Xiaowen parked in the parking lot in front of the restaurant. The two of them walked in and ordered a few of their favorite dishes, as well as a jug of stewed white fungus and lotus seed porridge. As Mei Xiaowen ate dinner with Gu Nianji, he told her everything about his relationship with his first girlfriend, Jiang Hongcha. "I was class rep back then, and she was a member of the Cultural and Recreation Committee. We knew each other from our families because our personalities and hobbies were very similar. We got to know each other pretty well, and when we were in high school we got along. Mei Xiaowen was very emotional as he talked about the past. He even took out his phone and showed Gunyinji the Weibo account of Black Tea's Sky. Look, this is the Weibo account we used back then. Only the two of us knew the password, but it was changed not long ago and I can't get in anymore. Gunyinji listened to him like she was listening to a love story. Finally, she held Mei Xiaowen's hand and looked at the Weibo account of Black Tea's Sky. The last Weibo post was a status from a few days ago. It said that the most beautiful scenery was right beside her. Gunyinji nodded. That's a smart person. She looked at Mei Xiaowen. If you two were so compatible, why did you break up in the first place? It was the third watch. The fourth watch at 8 p.m. And the monthly tickets were 1,700 plus updates. A reminder for the monthly and recommendation votes. Chapter 103. Mei Xiaowen's expression visibly darkened. He propped his head on his hand and leaned against the dining table. I was too young and didn't know how to appreciate her. She was stubborn and I didn't think I needed to accommodate her. Plus, she was unfamiliar with the place and needed help after leaving the country. I was too far away to help. Gunyinji understood and was shocked. She had a new boyfriend? Mei Xiaowen looked at her helplessly and smiled. Nianji, save me some face, don't be so direct. Gunyinji actually wanted to ask if she had a new boyfriend before or after the breakup. If it was before the breakup, then Mei Xiaowen's first girlfriend had cheated on him and made him a cuckold. Seeing that Mei Xiaowen didn't want to continue, she guessed he really was a cuckold. Gunyinji felt a bit more sympathy for Mei Xiaowen. Let's eat, let's eat. Is this your favorite steak? Gunyinji quickly used serving chopsticks to pick up a piece of beef tenderloin for Mei Xiaowen. Eat more. Mei Xiaowen opened his mouth and smiled. You feed me. Gunyinji's hand paused. She smiled and said, my wrist is weak so I don't dare feed it. Be careful not to feed it to your face. As she spoke, her hand shook and the piece of beef cubes fell into the small bowl in front of him. You're so slippery, I won't let you off the hook next time. Mei Xiaowen squeezed her hand and winked at her. Gunyinji quietly broke free and scooped up a spoonful of porridge to eat with relish. The two quietly finished their dinner, then ordered a pot of tea and sat opposite each other to digest the food. Mei Xiaowen sat next to her and took out his phone. Look at this, I was bored while waiting for you this afternoon and applied for a Weibo account. Let's use it together. Gunyinji looked at the Weibo name. Nianzi is here. Her name was at the top and bottom of the account. She couldn't help blushing and smiled. Class rep and I aren't close enough to share a Weibo account, right? Don't pretend to be innocent. Mei Xiaowen chuckled as he sent the Weibo account and password to Gunyinji's phone. Take it. If you have anything to say, you can go up to the tree hole. No one will know. Gunyinji thought to herself, I have a lot of aliases. If I wanted a tree hole, why would I go to a tree hole on Weibo, where everyone was dying to write my name on their foreheads? I'll post anything I want to say. Mei Xiaowen logged in and asked, what's your Weibo account? Let's become a fan. Gunyinji smiled and shook her head. I don't have a Weibo account. I don't even have a QQ account. That's even better. You can have this Weibo account. Mei Xiaowen quickly said, I'll help you manage it. How many fans do you want? I'll buy it for you. Gunyinji said. You just said that no one would know if we went up to the tree hole. Why was he buying fans in the blink of an eye? Ah, they're all zombie fans. It's like there's no one there. It's just that you won't feel lonely when you see so many fans of this account. Mei Xiaowen laughed cheerfully. His gold-rimmed glasses made him look elegant and handsome. The girls in the restaurant kept glancing at Mei Xiaowen with their glasses. They were obviously very interested in him. Gunyinji didn't listen to anything else Mei Xiaowen said. Only the phrase, you won't feel lonely anymore, touched her. How am I lonely? I have 3 sisters in the dorm and you're with me when I come out. How am I lonely? She stubbornly refused to admit it. Mei Xiaowen smiled but didn't say anything. His dark eyes looked at her gently from behind his gold-rimmed glasses. In that instant, Gunyinji actually felt like time had calmed down. She sat next to Mei Xiaowen and looked out the large French windows of the restaurant. She smiled slightly. Mei Xiaowen saw her smile and smiled back. I'll write an article for you when I get back. You should read it. It's best if you write something about your thoughts. Oh, I can't do that. I can only read. I can't write. Gunyinji smiled and shook her head. Not like you, class representative, you're an artistic youth with a good pen. Mei Xiaowen coaxed her good-naturedly. It's fine if you can read it. Call me when you're done and tell me what you think. Okay. That depends on how well you write. Gunyinji replied slyly. They finished their tea in the restaurant before leaving to return to the dorm. Gu Nianji showered and washed her hair. Then she dried her hair with a hairdryer. She was so busy that she forgot about Yin Shixiang. She originally wanted to ask Yin Shixiang if he had contacted Hua Xiaoheng before going to bed. But as soon as her hair was dry, she was so sleepy that she fell asleep. After Yin Shixiang hung up on Gu Nianji, he called Zhao Liangzi. The two of them casually chatted for a while before Yin Shixiang told him about Gu Nianji's call. If you have time, ask Hua Xiao if he agreed to let Nianji intern at the U.S. Congress. Yin Shixiang didn't make it very clear. After all, Zhao Liangzi and the others were in Europe and were using satellite transmission. They were worried about security, so many things were spoken in code. Zhao Liangzi was also shocked when he heard the news. He couldn't help but ask, "Isn't Professor He treating Nianji too well?" "He's treating her well. But our Nianji is so good. She's beautiful, smart and so cute. Who wouldn't like her?" Yin Shixiang said proudly, "Men who don't like her are abnormal." A tall figure stood diagonally behind Zhao Liangzi, right in the camera's blind spot. Zhao Liangzi suddenly coughed violently. Yin Shixiang didn't see Hua Xiaoheng coming over. He was talking excitedly as if Gu Nianji was really his daughter. "Little Zay, let me tell you, men are all like this. From 18 to 80, their standards for choosing women have never changed. Not only is our Nianji beautiful, but she also has a great figure. She's still very young. When she really grows up and matures, who knows how many men will fall for her. What about you? You like Nianji too? Or are you abnormal?" A deep voice suddenly came from Zhao Liangzi's side. Yin Shixiang didn't realize it and automatically replaced the voice with Zhao Liangzi's. He waved his arms and said, "How can I be like a normal man? I'm Nianji's guardian. He had watched her grow up, okay. How can I have those kinds of thoughts about her? How can I be human?" Hua Xiaoheng's expression was normal. He crossed his arms and walked over. He waved in front of the camera and pointed at Yin Shixiang. "At least you know your place." Yin Shixiang almost had a heart attack when he saw Hua Xiaoheng's despairingly handsome face appear on the computer screen. He screamed and his whole body jerked forward. He rolled off the sofa and onto the floor, landing squarely on his butt. "Tell me what's with the U.S. Congress intern." Hua Xiaoheng sat down next to Zhao Liangzi and took the mouse to control the computer. This was the fourth update. Monthly votes of 1,700 plus updates had arrived. P.S. The first 3 updates had already been scrolled by a girl, but they could still see it if they scrolled forward and refreshed a few more times. Don't skip. I resent my friends for skipping subscriptions. I'm squatting in the corner and drawing circles. Let me remind you about your monthly votes and recommendation votes. Oh, __intersection. Oh. Chapter 104. Yin Shixiang used the coffee table to get up from the floor and sat back on the sofa. He lowered his head and didn't dare look at the computer screen as he said with a frown, "Nianji's master's advisor, Professor He, offered her a chance to intern at the U.S. Congress for half a year. So Nianji came to ask if her passport was still valid and if she could go. An opportunity offered by Professor He?" Hua Xiaoheng opened the B University School of Law website and looked at He Zhichu's homepage and resume. Carefully investigate He Zhichu's background. If there are no other issues, apply for a passport for her. Hua Xiaoheng was silent for a moment, his dark eyes unfathomable. As for whether she wants to intern at the U.S. Congress, let her choose. Yin Shixiang said, but Nianji won't be 18 until October. Before that, she needs a guardian to accompany her when she goes abroad. He squinted and stared at Hua Xiaoheng's face to see how he would react. Hua Xiaoheng stood up from the computer screen and walked to the window. Holding a cigarette between his fingers, he lowered his head and lit it. Taking a deep drag, he looked out at the starry sky of Prague and said dryly, "If Nianji chooses to go Big Xiong, you go with her. It's only half a year, you can go to the US to see how the goldfish are doing there." The Wuxia Empire and the US were the only 2 superpowers on the blue planet. The 2 countries had normal exchanges and business with each other, but there were also all kinds of covert assassinations and infiltrations. The CIA had people in the Wuxia Empire and the Special Operations Forces had people in the US. Everyone was the same, so no one could criticize the other from the moral high ground. Yin Shixiang nodded at the computer screen. "Nianji will graduate in half a month. We'll make arrangements then." After talking about Nianji, Yin Shixiang asked about Hua Xiaoheng's mission. Zhao Liangzi shook his head at the camera. "Just take care of Nianji. Don't worry about us. We're fine." Yin Shixiang could only stop talking. He joked a few more times before turning off the computer and going to sleep. Hua Xiaoheng was still worried and specifically asked Zhao Liangzi to investigate He Zhichu's background again. As long as there was nothing wrong with He Zhichu, he could rest assured that Gu Nianji would go with Yin Shixiang to the U.S. Congress. Even if Hua Xiaoheng hadn't asked, Zhao Liangzi would have helped him investigate He Zhichu's background. In the past, when He Zhichu had come to C University to enroll new students, they had already investigated him once. They hadn't found anything shameful. All of his resumes had been verified by a third party, and they all matched up. This time, because the U.S. Congress was involved, it was necessary for them to go through He Zhichu's investigation again to see if they had missed anything. He Zhichu's social connections should be the focus of their investigation this time. Hua Xiao, are you really not worried? Zhao Liangzi was surfing the internet as he whispered his concerns to Hua Xiaoheng. Nianji has grown up under our strict protection for the past 6 years. Even so, she's had a few minor accidents. Are you really comfortable letting her leave our sphere of influence and go to the United States for half a year? The cigarette between Hua Xiaoheng's fingers flickered. He stopped smoking and looked out the window at the night sky. It's because she's been with us for 6 years, but we still can't find out where she came from, so it was time to make a move and see if the east wasn't bright, the west was bright, and give them some unexpected results. Zhao Liangzi listened and didn't speak for a long time. However, the sound of his typing became much louder. It was like he was venting his anger, and the laptop keyboard was about to fall apart. Hua Xiaoheng turned to look at him and smiled faintly. You have a problem with that? How would I dare to have a problem with that? Zhao Liangzi was almost sneering. He rolled his eyes and looked at Hua Xiaoheng. He had wanted to argue with Hua Xiaoheng about Gu Nianji's problem, but when Hua Xiaoheng glanced at him indifferently, he deflated like a balloon and suddenly lost all his courage. Why aren't you saying anything? Hua Xiaoheng moved away from the window and sat on the single sofa. He rested his long legs on the round leg in front of the sofa. He looked relaxed as if nothing could stump him. Zhao Liangzi looked at Hua Xiaoheng again and saw that his expression was calm and composed. His aura was as steady as a mountain and indomitable. Under the light, Hua Xiaoheng's face was so handsome that it made people despair, but also so cold that it made people's hearts palpitate. Every time this happened, his coldness almost surpassed his handsomeness. He was like a peerless sword whose murderous aura and sharpness completely overshadowed his original beauty. Thinking of Gu Nianji, who Hua Xiaoheng wholeheartedly relied on and trusted, Zhao Liangzi gritted his teeth and buried his head in front of the laptop. He quickly muttered, I'll say it. Hua Xiao, Nianji has been with us for 6 years. Does she have no place in your heart? Hua Xiaoheng didn't say anything. He only took another drag of his cigarette and slowly blew out a ring of smoke. The white smoke lingered in front of him and covered his eyes. Zhao Liangzi looked up from the computer screen. He couldn't see what Hua Xiaoheng's deep gaze meant behind the smoke. He continued to speak his heart. Even if it was a cat or dog, you would be reluctant to part with it after raising it for 6 years, right? How could you have the heart to throw her out like she was bait? Just to find out where she came from? Or is it for other motives? What other motives do you think I have? Hua Xiaoheng extinguished the cigarette in the ashtray and crossed his legs. He casually draped one arm over the armrest of the single-seater sofa and propped his head up with the other arm. He leaned against the other armrest. I didn't expect you and Yin Shixiang to be so impulsive and soft-hearted. Looks like I was wrong about you. I don't need soldiers like you. Zhao Liangzi was so scared his heart almost jumped out of his throat. He hurriedly stood up and stood in front of Hua Xiaoheng. He shouted, Hua Xiao. You were the one who told me to speak my mind. Yes. Hua Xiaoheng nodded slightly. But I'm very dissatisfied with your answer. Zhao Liangzi pressed his lips together so tightly that his cheeks puffed out. His handsome face flushed. I'm a human, not a machine. Although he knew that Hua Xiaoheng had always treated him like a war machine and didn't want to have a shred of humanity, Hua Xiaoheng glanced at Zhao Liangzi. That's enough. Go finish what you have to do. Yes, sir. Zhao Liangzi saluted and puffed out his chest. Before his courage dissipated, he mustered up the courage to say, Hua Xiao. Nianji isn't even 18 yet. It's not easy for her. I know. Hua Xiaoheng raised his hand to stop Zhao Liangzi. I know what I'm doing. But you have to remember that the military asked us to take care of Gu Nianji, not to find a nanny for her, but to find out where she came from. Before we find out where she came from, she can only be our target and our observation target. Do you understand? I know you're human, but to be an outstanding soldier and an outstanding member of the Special Operations Forces, you have to overcome your human weaknesses in order to be truly invincible. This is the first night watch. I still have to continue with the fourth night watch. The second night watch at 1 p.m. Monthly votes of 1,800 plus updates. The third night watch at 6 p.m. The monthly votes of 1,900 plus updates at 8 p.m. Remind everyone of your monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 105. Zhao Liang's lips trembled for a long time, but he couldn't find the words to refute Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng's words were reasonable and understandable from their point of view. However, Zhao Liangzi was a more meticulous person. As a computer hacker who spent most of his time on the internet, his way of thinking was always focused on finding bugs and plugging holes. Hua Xiao, what if, and I mean what if, something happens to Nianji? Zhao Liangzi returned to the computer and sat down. If that happens, we still won't be able to find out where she came from, and we'll have wasted 6 years. Hua Xiaoheng propped his head up with one hand and leaned against the armrest of the single-seater sofa. He didn't speak for a long time and only smoked soundlessly. Zhao Liangzi waited for a long time for Hua Xiaoheng to speak, but didn't ask again. They both knew that Hua Xiaoheng never answered hypothetical questions. To him, once he made a decision, he had to give it his all and be prepared to deal with all possible problems and difficulties. He wouldn't be tied down by various possible outcomes. As a soldier, he only wanted one outcome, and that was victory. Gu Nianji woke up the next day and remembered asking Yin Shixiang about last night. She closed her eyes and dialed his number. Yin Shixiang was already up. He had just returned from his morning exercise and was having breakfast with the soldiers in the cafeteria. When he saw Gu Nianji's call, he knew it was about her internship at the U.S. Congress. Nianji, you're up so early? Yin Shixiang put on his Bluetooth headset and walked out of the cafeteria to his office. Gu Nianji grunted and rubbed her eyes. She sat up in bed and asked, Brother Xiong, did you ask Uncle Hua about my passport? Yin Shixiang coughed. Mr. Hua is on a mission and time is tight, so he didn't say much. He only said that if you want to go, he'll get you a passport and visa. I'll be your temporary guardian when you go to the U.S. Really? Gu Nianji was overjoyed and wanted to jump up and cheer. Uncle Hua agreed? Then no problem, I'll let Professor He know right away. She quickly hung up on Yin Shixiang and called He Zhichu instead. However, He Zhichu didn't pick up. Gu Nianji had no choice but to text him. Professor He, my guardian, agreed. What about the paperwork? By the time He Zhichu replied to her, it was already 3 days later. Professor He, Nianji, if you want to go, there's a registration method on the B University Faculty of Law website. Today is the registration deadline. Along with the text came an email. It was He Zhichu's revised graduation thesis. Gu Nianji looked at the text and sighed quietly. She hadn't agreed immediately at the time, but she had still angered Professor He. But now he was clearly being lukewarm towards her. Even a cooked duck had flown away. As Gu Nianji cursed He Zhichu's narrow-mindedness, she ran to the website of the B University Faculty of Law to find He Zhichu's registration method for the 2 U.S. congressional internships. Sure enough, today was the last day of registration. She filled out the various forms according to the requirements and clicked send. A minute later, she received a receipt in her mailbox, informing her that she had registered and giving her a number, 38. Gu Nianji, could it be that 38 people signed up? TSK, did He Zhichu have that many PhD students? Gu Nianji was He Zhichu's first and only master's student. He Zhichu's other students were all PhD students, one level higher than her. That meant she was at the bottom of the list of 38 people who signed up. Gu Nianji didn't like being at the bottom. She liked being at the top. After signing up, she began revising for the exam. He Zhichu had revised her graduation thesis very carefully. She read it over and couldn't find anything that needed to be changed. She finalized it, printed it out, and handed it to her tutor to finalize the thesis defense a week later. That week, she left early and returned late every day to prepare for He Zhichu's exam. Mei Xiaowen came to accompany her as usual. From morning to night, he was by her side whenever he had time. He even helped her with her mock exams and various spot checks. He was a great help. Gu Nianji really didn't like being alone, so she didn't reject his company. Hua Xiaoheng led a group of people to stay in Prague in the Czech Republic for a few days. He had a thorough understanding of the city. From the topographic map of the city to the landmarks to the places where the various ethnic groups lived, everything was marked out in detail. The Nandu satellite navigation system designed and launched by the Wuxia Empire provided the greatest convenience for their operation. The 3 Whitewater Security Group mercenaries who lived in Prague didn't live on the same street. Lam, the oldest of them all, lived in a residential area near Prague's old city square. The area was densely populated and it seemed like his family lived there as well. Lam walked in and out of the area like any other ordinary person. It was hard to tell that he was a veteran of the special forces. Lam was the most cautious and the leader of the 8 mercenaries. He had killed the most people. The second person was Hutu in his prime. He didn't have a wife or children, nor did he own his own property. He was used to living in a hotel near St. Vitus Church. In comparison, Hutu was the easiest to target. He was a heavy drinker and was drunk 6 out of 7 days a week. The third mercenary was Mike. He was originally British, but after retiring from the British Special Forces, he accepted the Whitewater Security Group's offer and joined the ranks of mercenaries. Mercenaries had no concept of country. They were a group of people who only cared about profit. As long as they could pay the price, they would do anything for you. Anything as small as killing your enemy, or as big as subverting a country's political power. Whether they would succeed or not was another matter, but their greatest characteristic was their willingness to take risks and not fear death. Although Lam, Hutu, and Mike were part of the same team, they usually didn't contact each other and acted independently. They would only meet regularly when they were out on missions to discuss the plan. This time the Whitewater Security Group had accepted a big deal. They were going to kill a young female tycoon in Barbados, Nguyen Ran. At first, the Whitewater Security Group thought the deal was a free lunch, so they didn't pay much attention to it. But for the sake of money, they had mobilized their most elite team of 8. However, as time passed, their initial plan seemed to have gone awry in Sea City of the Wuxia Empire. The batch of firearms that had been transported in had been seized by the Sea City police. The Whitewater Security Group was organizing people to continue smuggling firearms into the Wuxia Empire. They had to kill their target, Nguyen Ran, in one blow before the International Extraordinary Women's Awards ceremony. Nguyen Ran herself wasn't a threat, and it was said that she was in poor health. She was sick all year round and lived in seclusion. In Barbados she could do whatever she wanted. Their people tried several times but they couldn't track her in Barbados. They even lost a lot of people. This was the second monthly vote of 1,800 plus updates. 6 at night, the third monthly vote. 8 at night, the monthly vote of 1,900 plus updates. Remind them of their monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 106. Hua Xiaoheng didn't know much about Gu Yanran's situation. Everything he knew was from the information the Secret Service had given him. Moreover, his focus was not on Gu Yanran. His focus was on dealing with the 8 mercenaries according to Gu Yanran's agreement with Deputy Director Feng of the Secret Service. Because the whole thing was the Secret Service's business, the Special Operations Forces of the 6th Military Region could not overstep their authority to this extent. From beginning to end, the only person who had contact with Gu Yanran was Deputy Director Feng of the Secret Service. Hua Xiaoheng's mission had been directly ordered by the military to attack the 8 mercenaries who were after Gu Yanran. Zhao Liangzi sat in front of the computer, investigating He Zhichu's social connections and discovered something curious. "Hey Hua Xiao, this is getting interesting." He waved at Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng looked up and threw the cigarette in his hand into the trash can. "What's wrong? Look at this. Do you think this is a coincidence or is there a reason?" Hua Xiaoheng could only walk over and stand behind Zhao Liangzi to take a look. He paused for a moment then smiled. "It's a little interesting." It turned out that when Zhao Liangzi was investigating He Zhichu's social connections, he discovered that Gu Yanran was actually a client of He Zhichu's law firm. However, she wasn't his client. TSK, this Gu Yanran is really rich. You see, for her to be able to hire such a big-name law firm as her legal representative, she's no ordinary rich person. Of course. Half of the GNP of a small country, do you think it's just an ordinary billionaire? Hua Xiaoheng shook his head nonchalantly. But He Zhichu's law firm is the largest in the United States. Most of their clients are either rich or powerful, so it's not surprising. It's not strange. I just think it's a bit of a coincidence. Zhao Liangzi held the mouse in his hand and kept clicking on Gu Yanran and He Zhichu's names. Hua Xiaoheng thought about it for a while and asked, "He Zhichu went back to the United States?" "Right, that's what the B University Faculty of Law website said." Zhao Liangzi looked it up. According to the itinerary, Gu Yanran is going to our country. These two people missed each other. Hua Xiaoheng frowned. "Remember this and send it to Big Xiong." When he goes to the United States with Nianji, follow this lead. Zhao Liangzi nodded and encrypted Gu Yanran's situation before sending it to Yin Shixiang. How are the preparations going here? When can we start? Huo Xiaoheng asked Zhao Liangzi. Have the team members sent a letter? After their group left the country, they would find a place to stay in pairs. Huo Xiaoheng was with Zhao Liangzi, and everyone else was assigned to the standard sniper and spotter positions. Because this time, they were going to use the killing method that the US SEALs often used to kill the 3 mercenaries from Prague. Zhao Liangzi checked his email. It's about time. All 3 teams will be in position in a day. Huo Xiaoheng lay back on the bed and flipped through a Czech magazine. He suddenly asked Zhao Liangzi, "Do you think Gu Yanran will be safe after killing these 8 mercenaries?" Zhao Liangzi smiled, stood up, and walked to the window to look at the night view of Prague. He shook his head and said, "Actually, I felt weird when I first heard about this mission. There was no end to mercenaries. If the other party really wanted her life, what was the point of killing these 8 mercenaries? She had to find the mastermind. Otherwise, if these 8 mercenaries had died, the mastermind could have hired even more powerful mercenaries." He then looked at Huo Xiaoheng. "Huo Xiao, are we going to keep killing them? How is this possible?" Huo Xiaoheng's eyes were dark and unreadable. "We agreed that she would hand over the blueprints after we killed the 8 mercenaries who wanted to deal with her. She refuses." Huo Xiaoheng smiled. He could be more ruthless than a mercenary. Zhao Liangzi understood what Huo Xiaoheng meant and shrugged. If she dared to renege on her debt to the Special Operations Forces, then Miss Gu could only pray for the best. The capabilities of the Empire's Special Operations Forces were not something that the Whitewater Security Group could compare to. Huo Xiaoheng flipped another page of the magazine and concluded, "So I think that killing the mercenaries was also a cover, not her real motive." Then Huo Xiao still came. Zhao Liangzi was shocked. "Isn't Huo Xiao afraid of being lured away?" Huo Xiaoheng glared at him. "Do you think the millions of soldiers in the Empire are dead? That the Empire can't do without us? Don't be too arrogant." I don't know if the Empire can do without us, but I do know that the Special Operations Forces can't do without Huo Xiao." Zhao Liangzi flattered Huo Xiaoheng. Huo Xiaoheng ignored him and continued to flip through the magazine in his hand. A day later they were ready to attack the 3 people at the same time. The 3 people were very alert and had special communication devices to keep in touch with each other. If they couldn't kill them at the same time, the people behind would definitely run away without a trace when they received the bad news. At that time it would be difficult to track them. On the day of the attack, Huo Xiaoheng put on a simple disguise. He wore a pair of sunglasses, a black t-shirt, and a pair of faded jeans. He left the hotel he and Zhao Liangzi were staying at and headed to Prague Square to feed the pigeons. His face was covered with a thick beard. He wore sunglasses, a black t-shirt, and faded jeans. The Bluetooth headset was in his ear, and he had a locator and communication device directly connected to the Nandu satellite navigation system. The Nandu satellite navigation system was a global communication and navigation system independently developed and manufactured by the Wuxia Empire. Its accuracy was very high, and it could guarantee that it could cover the entire blue planet 24 hours a day without any blind spots. The weather in early June in Prague was very good. The sky was as blue as the finest sapphire. Pigeons flew through the blue sky and white clouds, whistling clearly in the air. Huo Xiaoheng sat on a bench on the edge of Prague Square and threw the breadcrumbs in his hand to the ground. A flock of gray-headed, white-bodied pigeons circled around him. His posture was relaxed and he was tall. He didn't seem to be inferior to the Eastern Europeans, so he didn't stand out at all. He was dressed like the artists in the square. Number 1, Target A is in position. Sitting by the window in a 3-story building in the old district of Prague, having breakfast. End of report. This was Rom's position and orientation. Number 1, Target B is in position. Room 319 on the 2nd floor of a home hotel near St. Vitus Church. About 1 meter away from the closed window. Requires heavy sniping. End of report. This was Hutu's position and orientation. Number 1, Target C is in position. Currently in front right of Prague Square. End of report. This was Mike's position and orientation. In other words, Mike was in the same place as Huo Xiaoheng. Mike was the youngest and often had no fixed residence, so he was the most difficult to track. This was the 3rd watch. 4th watch at 8 p.m. Monthly votes of 1,900 plus updates. Remind everyone of your monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 107. Huo Xiaoheng listened to the report and didn't do anything. He only grunted to indicate that everything would go according to plan. They had already spent 2 weeks in the Czech Republic. It was time to act. Zhao Liangzi was in charge of coordinating from the hotel. When he heard Hua Xiaoheng's approval, he immediately issued orders to the 3 teams through the Nandu satellite navigation system. Everyone get into position. We'll move in 5 minutes. 5 minutes was the shortest amount of time a sniper could take to aim. Because of their special circumstances, they had spent a long time preparing in advance. Once everything was in place, 5 minutes was more than enough time to aim and shoot. Roger. No problem. All 3 teams gave affirmative answers. Zhao Liangzi then passed the message to Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng didn't say anything. He bent down and threw out a handful of breadcrumbs. A flock of pigeons flew up from the square. The sky was filled with bright pigeon whistles. Looking up, there were white clouds floating in the clear blue sky. All kinds of pigeons spread their wings and flew high, comparable to white swans. In the midst of the loud whistles, a small red dot silently locked onto Mike's forehead, who was sitting at the other end of the square. Mike's vigilance was very high. His heart suddenly palpitated and the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He felt a sense of urgency. Looking around the square, he saw a tall, bearded man sitting on the bench opposite him. The man seemed to be looking at him too. Seeing him look over, the man threw another handful of pigeon food into the air. Instantly, countless large, strong pigeons flew down from the sky and swooped down to snatch the food from the man. Mike saw that the man seemed to be surrounded by pigeons and suddenly laughed. As he laughed, the vigilance in his heart quickly dissipated. At that moment, an olive-shaped sniper bullet spiraled over from 500 meters away and whizzed right into Mike's forehead. Mike didn't even make a sound before falling flat on his back on the bench. From Hua Xiaoheng's angle, it looked like Mike was looking up at the pigeons in the sky. Target C completed. End of report. Hua Xiaoheng nodded and got up to leave the square. There weren't many people in the square. Hua Xiaoheng didn't know when everyone would realize that Mike, who was sitting on the bench, had been shot to death. Almost at the same time, a heavy sniper rifle armor-piercing bullet broke through the wall of room 319 on the 2nd floor of the hotel near St. Vitus Church and hit Hutu, who was cleaning his gun in the room, in the back of his heart. A pink mist of blood sprayed onto the wall opposite of Hutu. The reddish-gold wallpaper immediately became mottled. Hutu fell to the ground like a pile of mud. In a 3-story building in the old district of Prague, Lam was sitting by the window eating breakfast. He was the oldest and most experienced leader. He had 1 more second than the other 2 and tilted his head to look out the window. With just 1 glance, he saw the familiar reflective halo on the opposite floor. It was the reflection of the scope of the sniper rifle when it was hit by light. But by the time Ram realized it, it was already too late. The bullet had already left the chamber. No matter how fast he was, he couldn't outrun the bullet that had already left the chamber. Bang! A bullet directly hit him in the head, piercing through the other side of his head and embedding itself in the opposite wall. Thump! Lam collapsed on his breakfast plate, no longer breathing. 3 assassinations in the same city had taken exactly 5 minutes. Retreat. Leave the Czech Republic and head to Austria. Hua Xiaoheng ordered them to throw away their American firearms and not bring them with them. Once they arrived in Austria, someone would naturally prepare the firearms they needed from the black market. The group traveled in groups of 2s and 3s from the Czech Republic to Austria. Hua Xiaoheng and Zhao Liangzi had brought many electronic devices, so they drove their own cars. 2 groups took the train from the Czech Republic to Austria. There was another group of people who took the bus. In short, like thousands of ordinary European tourists, they tried their best to blend in with the crowd and be inconspicuous. When they arrived in Austria, they watched TV and discovered that the news of the 3 deaths in the Czech Republic was already all over the news. The Czech Republic invited Russian military experts to examine the ballistic traces and found the abandoned sniper rifles. After careful investigation, the Russian military experts determined that the 3 murders were committed by the same organization, and the methods of the killings were the usual methods of the U.S. Navy SEALs. They also believed that only the United States had the ability to sneak into the Czech Republic and commit such crimes, and then escape unscathed. Because the Czech Republic had sealed off its borders, they searched the entire country for 2 to 3 days without finding the culprit. Other than the United States, which other country would do such a thing? The Czech government was furious and sent a diplomatic note to the American embassy demanding an explanation for the 3 murders in the Czech Republic. The American ambassador to the Czech Republic was sweating profusely from the Czech Ministry of Foreign Affairs questions. The Czech Republic had a lot of evidence and their arguments were rigorous. Together with the authority of the Russian military experts, The US ambassador even suspected that it was their country's special forces that did it. So proud. Well done. Oh, I can't say that, because it was quite common for the American CIA to do such things. They were not afraid of war and they loved it. They would feel sorry for their country and its people if they didn't stir up civil strife in other countries. The arrogant American ambassador said to the Czech diplomat in a muffled Southern American accent, "We are very sorry that such a thing happened. We offer our deepest condolences to the families of the victims and hope that they can rest in peace in heaven." That's it. The Czech diplomat was furious. Are you not going to hand over the culprit? You're asking me for the culprit? But I'm not a Czech policeman. The American ambassador was just short of flicking his fingernails and shouting, "See the guest out." His expression was very dismissive. Then what do you think we should do? The Czech diplomat pounded the table. Do you still treat the Czech Republic as an independent sovereign country? I came to the Czech Republic as an ambassador, not to listen to your lecture. The American ambassador's face darkened. Go, I hope you catch the culprit as soon as possible. The American ambassador finally couldn't take it anymore and sent the guest out. After this incident, the Czech Republic recalled its ambassador to the United States and expelled an American diplomat. When the American CIA learned about this, they were also furious. They were humiliated for no reason, but they couldn't clear their name. That was because the Whitewater Security Group was actually a peripheral organization of the CIA. They couldn't even go to the Czech Republic to investigate the Whitewater Security Group. They were the mercenaries they had raised themselves. If this incident got out of hand, the Whitewater Security Group's background would be easily uncovered. So after thinking about it, the CIA decided that it was better to take the blame. They had a lot of mercenaries anyway. Even if 3 of them died, there were still tens of thousands of them that could be sent out on missions. The entire assassination incident ended with the United States and the Czech Republic expelling each other's diplomat. Zhao Liangzi summarized the entire process and reported it to Hu Xiaoheng. He smiled. It seems that our training was very good. He managed to fool the Russian Special Forces military experts and the US Navy SEAL team leader. Hu Xiaoheng only glanced at the results. Now we need to deal with the 3 people in Austria. Proceed according to the original plan, just like in the Czech Republic. The Special Operations Forces began operating in Austria. Meanwhile, on the Sea University campus in the Empire Sea City, the graduation thesis defense of the graduating seniors was in full swing. This was the 4th monthly vote of 1,900 plus updates. Let me remind you of your monthly and recommendation votes. Chapter 108. Gu Nianji's bachelor's thesis had been meticulously edited by He Zhichu, and her own abilities were outstanding. Therefore, she had been invincible during the oral defense. The Oral Defense Committee had unanimously approved it and named it the best thesis among the graduating seniors in the Faculty of Law. Gu Nianji wasn't surprised at all. To her, there was no suspense in the defense. She was focused on preparing for He Zhichu's exam. This exam would determine whether or not she could get one of the 2 internships at the US Congress. Gu Nianji regretted not agreeing right away at first, so she had to work hard to prepare for the exam. But after reading all the books He Zhichu assigned on American law and the structure of Congress, she understood He Zhichu's intentions and thought it was better to take the exam. At least it would be mandatory, so she could familiarize herself with the basic essentials of American law and the legal structure of the US Congress in a short period of time. On June 15th, Gu Nianji was so busy she only had breakfast. She came out of the defense in the law faculty's conference room in the morning and took He Zhichu's exam in the afternoon. He Zhichu's exam format was very unique. It wasn't an exam paper but a live question and answer session. It simulated the format of a US Congress meeting, then combined all kinds of relevant knowledge to test their grasp of knowledge and adaptability. He Zhichu, who was in charge of the exam, was in the United States. Other than Gu Nianji, everyone else was in B City. Therefore, the exam was conducted through a remote video conference. Gu Nianji turned on her computer and connected to the exam website. He Zhichu's handsome face appeared on the computer screen. A pair of shimmering, sultry eyes stared straight out from the screen. It was shocking to see through someone's heart. Gu Nianji sighed inwardly. A person with such eyes should be a judge, not a lawyer. No matter how stubborn a criminal was, they would immediately confess when they were stared at by those eyes. Before the exam begins, I'll take attendance. He Zhichu's cool voice came through the earpiece, and Gu Nianji quickly sat up straight. When she heard her name, she answered crisply, "Here." He Zhichu sat alone in his large office. With a light click of the mouse, he enlarged Gu Nianji's profile picture on the screen. The other 37 candidates' profiles became little black dots on the screen. Today's exam, the first question: how does the U.S. Congress propose? You can enter your answer in the dialog box without speaking. Time limit: 1 minute. With such a short period of time, the examinees wouldn't even have enough time to search for information. Gu Nianji easily answered all the general questions and entered the debate stage. This was not a problem for Gu Nianji. She had always been eloquent and good at finding loopholes in people's words. Even though she was facing a PhD student who was several levels higher than her, she was not afraid at all. Her words were like pearls of laughter. Although her words were sharp, the speed of her speech was neither fast nor slow, and her voice was pleasant to listen to. Unexpectedly, the person who was rebutted did not feel uncomfortable. Unknowingly, she had set the pace for the whole debate. The smile on He Zhichu's face grew wider. Joy rose from the bottom of his heart and melted into the depths of his shimmering eyes. Very quickly, 3 hours passed, and this difficult exam finally came to an end. The examinees who participated in the exam all collapsed in front of the camera. They were extremely tired. He Zhichu replied dryly, "You can't even stand this level of intensity? Once the U.S. Congress is in session, it's normal for them to work intensively for 7 to 8 days to pass a bill." Everyone hurriedly sat down, not daring to relax. After the exam, they had to wait for the results. However, the examinees who participated in the exam all knew that one of the 2 spots would definitely be given to their master's junior, Gu Nianji. Because her performance on the exam was so eye-catching, the PhD students like them had to concede defeat. As for who the other spot would be given to, it was none of Gu Nianji's business. In fact, Gu Nianji received a text from He Zhichu within 10 minutes of the exam. "Congratulations, you're preparing to go to the United States." Gu Nianji was so happy that she almost jumped up. She didn't even have time to turn off the camera. She raised her fist and ran around the dorm, screaming. Because she had to take the remote video exam, the other 3 people in the dorm consciously went out and hadn't returned yet. At that moment, Gu Nianji was the only one in the dorm. It was time for her to let loose. He Zhichu saw Gu Nianji's elated expression from the other side of the world. He rested his chin on his desk with both hands and smiled slightly. He closed the other examinees' web pages and left Gu Nianji alone. When she was done, he said slowly, "Nianji, your camera is still on." He Zhichu's voice came from the laptop's microphone, and Gu Nianji was instantly embarrassed. She walked back to the desk awkwardly and saw He Zhichu's handsome face on the computer screen, as well as the teasing look in his eyes. She closed her eyes and reached out to close the laptop with a click. Soon her cell phone rang. Gu Nianji took it and saw it was an overseas number. She swiped open the phone. "Hi. Nianji, why did you suddenly disconnect?" It was He Zhichu's clear voice. Gu Nianji was speechless. He must be doing this on purpose, right? "Why aren't you saying anything?" He Zhichu asked again. "Is your visa ready? When can you come over?" Gu Nianji sighed in relief. She had been so embarrassed just now. Fortunately, He Zhichu knew his limits and didn't continue to tease her. "The passport is ready, but I can only get the visa after you give me a certificate," Gu Nianji said honestly. "If I only have a tourist visa, I can't intern at the U.S. Congress." He Zhichu nodded. "Don't worry about that. Your visa documents will be sent over immediately. Apply for an F1 student visa, and when you come over I'll get you an OPT. That way you can intern at the U.S. Congress." "Thank you, Professor He." Gu Nianji thanked him politely and hung up. That day, other than making a fool of herself in front of He Zhichu, Gu Nianji was very satisfied with everything else. She had finished her thesis defense and passed He Zhichu's exam. In theory, she was already He Zhichu's disciple. For her, her undergraduate life had ended on this day. The passport was ready, and the next step was to book a visa at the U.S. consulate. He Zhichu's documents were sent out quickly, and by the weekend, Gu Nianji had already received an F1 student visa to the U.S. He Zhichu was very anxious. Knowing that she had received her visa, he immediately ordered Wen Shui to buy plane tickets for her and another PhD student for them to fly to the U.S. on June 20th. Because they had F1 student visas, He Zhichu, as the sponsor professor, had to give them a certain amount of credits to fulfill the visa requirements. In Shixiang didn't expect them to be so anxious. After communicating with Hua Xiaoheng, he packed his luggage and went to the U.S. with Gu Nianji. At the Sea City International Airport, Mei Xiaowen held Gu Nianji's hand reluctantly. "You'll come back, right?" "Of course I'll come back. I'll only be going for half a year." I'll be going to be university next spring. Gunyanji comforted him with a smile. Don't think too much about it. It's so easy to keep in touch now, remember to keep in touch. Mei Xiaowen nodded and walked Gunyanji to the security gate. Yin Shixiang didn't stop him. He followed at a moderate distance and didn't reveal his identity. Mei Xiaowen watched Gunyanji's figure disappear through the security gate before he reluctantly turned to leave. However, before he could walk out of the departure lounge, he saw a figure that had once haunted his dreams slowly pushing a luggage cart towards him from another exit. Mei Xiaowen froze. After a long while he finally snapped back to reality. The woman pushing the luggage stood in front of him and called out in surprise. Xiaowen? Why are you here? I'm so happy to see you as soon as I return. It was his first girlfriend, Jiang Hongxia. This was the first night watch. Today was Sunday and I had to rest after staying up for a few nights. I can't do the fourth night watch, it's the third night watch. I'll do the fourth night watch tomorrow. The second night watch would be the second night watch for Yun Huiweqing's reward. The third night watch at 6 in the evening. A reminder for the monthly and recommendation votes. Chapter 109. A surprise, isn't it? A chance encounter like this proves that you're still together. AI Weinan's voice came from not far away. She smiled and waved at Jiang Hongxia. Hongxia, I told you I'd come get you. She winked at her. Jiang Hongxia was a girl in her 20s. Her face was gentle and pretty, and her voice was always soft. She never raised her voice or lost her temper. Like Mei Xiaowen, she loved literature and liked to write for her own amusement. You've been abroad for 4 years, why are you getting more and more shy? Why are you blushing? AI Weinan made a face at Jiang Hongxia. Do uncle and auntie know you're coming home today? Jiang Hongxia's fair face blushed. She shook her head. I have a surprise for them, I haven't told them yet. Mei Xiaowen bent down to help Jiang Hongxia pick up one of her suitcases. He smiled. It's a surprise, you surprised me first. Jiang Hongxia cocked her head at Mei Xiaowen. Really? I really surprised you? AI Weinan hurried forward to pick up the other suitcase. She said cheerfully, of course. I can guarantee you that class rep has been behaving himself for 4 years. He hasn't had a girlfriend and he's been waiting for you to come home. Jiang Hongxia smiled gently at Mei Xiaowen. Xiaowen, you're a handsome man with an outstanding family background. You probably have high standards, or else why wouldn't you have a girlfriend? Mei Xiaowen looked at AI Weinan. I have a girlfriend. I was taking her to the plane when I bumped into Hongxia. The blood drained from Jiang Hongxia's face. AI Weinan punched Mei Xiaowen anxiously. Class rep, why are you so dumb? Hongxia's been single all this time, she doesn't have a boyfriend, she only has you in her heart. I've put in so many good words for you in front of Hongxia, but you've ruined all my efforts with one sentence. Mei Xiaowen's eyes moved to Jiang Hongxia's face. He raised his eyebrows, his expression cold. Mei Xiaowen knew better than anyone whether Jiang Hongxia had a boyfriend or not. But AI Weinan didn't seem to know, or she wouldn't have said that. Jiang Hongxia looked away hastily and forced a smile. Weinan, I haven't seen you in years, you've gotten bolder. Alright, let's go back first. Don't block the entrance. Mei Xiaowen said, I'll take you. If you didn't tell your family, they won't send a car for you. Jiang Hongxia had planned to take a taxi home to surprise her family. He hadn't expected to run into Mei Xiaowen here. She gave AI Weinan a meaningful look. She understood why AI Weinan had suddenly asked her to change her ticket to today's flight back to China. AI Weinan grinned at her and hooked her arm. Let's go, Red T. Class rep's car is an SUV. It's big enough, I'm sure it can fit all your luggage. Let's go to the parking lot. Mei Xiaowen headed for the airport elevator. They arrived at the parking lot, got into the car and quickly drove to the highway. Hongxia, are you back for a vacation or are you staying? AI Weinan and Jiang Hongxia were both sitting in the second row of seats. The two of them were squeezed together, looking very affectionate. Jiang Hongxia glanced at Mei Xiaowen. She lowered her eyes and stroked the string of suet jade beads on her wrist. I've accepted a job with the Imperial Symphony Orchestra. I'll be reporting in September. The First Symphony Orchestra of the Empire? That's in the capital. AI Weinan exclaimed. Red T, how could you leave me in class rep to work in the capital? Can't you stay here? After graduating from university, AI Weinan had returned to work in her family's business in Sea City. Of course, her family's background was far inferior to that of the Mei and Jiang families. Jiang Hongxia had studied abroad at the Juilliard School of Music in New York. She had majored in violin and minored in cello. She was very talented in music. She had won several international awards while studying at the Juilliard School of Music, and had released several best-selling postmodern violin albums. She had already gained a certain reputation both at home and abroad. Someone like her was more than qualified to be a violinist in the Empire's best symphony orchestra. When Mei Xiaowen heard this, he felt a faint sense of pride. He smiled. Red tea is still as good as ever. It looks like the 4 years abroad weren't a waste. That's because I was lucky to have a good tutor. Jiang Hongcha smiled and nodded. I'll be staying home for a few months this time, so I can spend some time with my family. There's going to be the International Extraordinary Women's Awards here in July, right? Yes, the city is taking this very seriously, and the preparations are almost complete. Mei Xiaowen continued from the driver's seat. I'm even a volunteer. Oh? Really? Jiang Hongcha was even more surprised. I'm the principal violinist for this year's awards, Xiaowen. We're going to be colleagues from now on. Mei Xiaowen chuckled and turned the steering wheel to exit the highway. He drove towards Jiang Hongcha's house. Mei Xiaowen and Jiang Hongcha chatted more often the rest of the way. The awkwardness of their first meeting was gone, and the two of them had regained their old rapport. The distance between them grew closer. Ai Weinan smiled sheepishly and looked away at the skyscrapers outside the car window. She clenched her fists so tightly that her fingernails dug into her palms. After a 12-hour flight, Gu Nianji arrived in Boston with her Ph.D. student. Her Ph.D. student's surname was Huang, and he called himself Medicine Master Huang. This was because his hobby was to study ancient Chinese medicine. Gu Nianji had a sweet tongue and kept calling him Brother Huang. The plane landed at Boston International Airport. Harvard University was located in Boston, and He Zhichu was a tenured professor at Harvard Law School. He also had a class of Ph.D. students to teach. Yin Shixiang did not sit with Gu Nianji, but a few rows away. They walked together when they got off the plane. Gu Nianji generously introduced him to Brother Huang. This is my brother Xiong, he's my guardian. He'll be staying with me for the next few months until I turn 18. Brother Huang exploded at her words. He clutched his chest and said, "Little sister, can you not remind me of my age? A man's age is a secret too." Gu Nianji giggled at his joke. Brother Huang was indeed older. He had become a Ph.D. student after working for a few years, and was 27 years old this year. He would graduate next year. Yin Shixiang looked at Brother Huang's hand, and noticed a diamond ring on the ring finger of his left hand. It was a sign that he was married. "Nice to meet you, nice to meet you." Yin Shixiang reached out to shake Brother Huang's hand. Yin Shixiang was certain that Brother Huang did not know any martial arts and was just a normal student. Brother Huang patted Gu Nianji's shoulder. "Doesn't your guardian have to work? He came all the way to the United States to stay with you for a few months, how thoughtful of him." Gu Nianji made up Yin Shixiang's job without blinking. Brother Xiong is a businessman, so he came to the United States to check out the market. "So you're a tycoon?" Brother Huang's eyes brightened. He grabbed Yin Shixiang's hand and shook it. "Hello, tycoon. Do you need a lawyer? I can recommend myself to represent you." "Get lost." Gu Nianji pushed Brother Huang away with a smile. "Brother Xiong has me as his legal representative. What are you doing?" "Oh, I forgot, little sister's grades will definitely be better than Brother Huang's in the future." "Fine." Brother Huang hung his head dejectedly. "Not being able to ride on Tycoon's coattails is worse than cutting my own flesh with a knife." Yin Shixiang was speechless. He looked down at himself. He was wearing the latest Brooks Brothers polo, casual pants and a pair of RS sneakers. He even wore a string of sandalwood prayer beads on his wrist. He looked like a tycoon who liked antiques. Wen Shuyi watched them from afar for a long time before walking over with a smile. "Nianji, little Huang, Professor, he asked me to come pick you up." It was the second update, and the second update for Yueqing and Yun Huayue's fate of spiritual pets had arrived. It was the third update at 6 p.m. A reminder for the monthly and recommendation votes. Chapter 110. Gu Nianji and Brother Huang nodded to Wen Shuyi. "Thank you, Teaching Assistant Wen." "Teaching Assistant Wen, this is my guardian." Gu Nianji pointed to Yin Shixiang beside her. Yin Shixiang had also disguised himself to look like a middle-aged man with dark skin, thick eyebrows and large eyes. He looked exactly the same as the last time He Zhichu had seen him at C University. Wen Shuyi also had an impression of Yin Shixiang. She remembered when Gu Nianji couldn't attend the interview, Yin Shixiang had applied for leave. She nodded politely. "Nice to meet you." She turned to lead them to a van and opened the door. "Come in, Professor, he has already arranged accommodations for you." Wen Shuyi personally drove them to an apartment near Harvard University. Wen Shuyi had rented 2 apartments there, one with 1 bedroom for Brother Huang and the other with 2 bedrooms for Gun Yanji and Yin Shixiang. Was very thoughtful. "Professor, he asked you to come earlier because your F1 student visa has a credit requirement. You're actually coming to Harvard University as exchange students. Professor, he will be teaching summer classes in July and August, so you'll be attending summer classes with him. You'll get 6 credits. Wen Shuyi handed 2 schedules to Gun Yanji and Brother Huang. Senior Brother Huang frowned awkwardly. "We still have to stay here for 2 months? Didn't we say we're interning at Congress?" Gun Yanji quietly nudged Brother Huang and whispered, "Congress is on recess in July and won't reconvene until September." Wen Shuyi patted Gun Yanji's shoulder approvingly. "As expected of our first place this year. You've done a very thorough preparation. You even knew that Congress was in recess. This kind of scheming is truly rare." She pursed her lips and smiled. "Professor He, you don't have to worry about being bullied because of your young age. Look at how smart you are, you're the only one who can bully others. How can others bully you?" It sounded like a compliment, but the tone was awkward. Gun Yanji already had a prejudice against Wen Shuyi because of what had happened before the interview. She was cautious and skeptical of whatever Wen Shuyi said now. But this time she didn't have to do anything. With Yin Shixiang, who was especially protective and had the gift of gab by her side, she would be able to teach Wen Shuyi a lesson. "You're teaching assistant 1, aren't you?" Yin Shixiang rolled his eyes. "You're a teaching assistant in the Faculty of Law and this is how you talk? Although I'm not a law student, I can tell that you were slandering my Nianji just now. Do you believe that I can sue you until you lose your job?" Wen Shuyi was stunned. She couldn't believe that someone would talk to her like that. In this world, she was confident that other than He Jichu, no one could be so disrespectful to her. "Is that so? Why don't you sue him? I'm waiting for the court summons." Wen Shuyi would not show weakness in front of others. Gun Yanji finally interrupted with a smile. "Brother Xiong, you don't have to go to court to make her lose her job. You can just tell her employer that she deliberately suppressed the students. Professor, he is a very fair and just person. I believe that he will uphold justice." Sure enough, he had to hit the snake where it hurt. Wen Shuyi wasn't afraid of anything except He Jichu. Her expression changed again and again and Gun Yanji saw it. Her disdain for Wen Shuyi increased. "Classmate Gu, I was just joking. Don't take it so seriously." Wen Shuyi's palms were sweaty. She suppressed her embarrassment and tactfully apologized to Gun Yanji. Brother Huang was watching from the sidelines. When he saw Wen Shuyi admit defeat, he patted Gun Yanji lightly to smooth things over. Okay, it was just a joke. Don't take it seriously." He then changed the subject. "Today is our first day in the United States. Where should we go for dinner to celebrate?" Wen Shuyi nodded to Brother Huang with a smile. "We've already prepared your dinner. There'll be a car to pick you up tonight." She nodded to Gun Yanji again before getting into the car and driving away. Gun Yanji twirled the apartment keys in her hand and pouted in the direction the car had disappeared. Brother Huang quickly advised her, "Yanji, don't let your emotions get the better of you. She's Professor He's teaching assistant. You'll be the one at a disadvantage if you have a falling out with her. We have to adapt to the circumstances." Gun Yanji thought to herself. Would Wen Shuyi not make fun of her if she tolerated it? Of course not. So why should she tolerate it? It didn't matter whether she tolerated it or not. Wen Shuyi acted like she was on drugs whenever she saw Gun Yanji. She wouldn't be able to complete her sentence without making fun of Gun Yanji. "Brother Huang, don't be afraid. I, Gun Yanji, have always been strong and unyielding. I'm not afraid of any evil forces. If teaching assistant one makes things difficult for you, tell me. I'll stand up for you." She said it with great confidence. The corners of Brother Huang's mouth twitched. He could only sigh internally at Gun Yanji's fearlessness and bravery. Yin Shixiang chewed his gum and nodded to Brother Huang with a wide smile. "Brother Huang, please take care of our Yanji in the future. She's young and doesn't know any better. If she offends you, don't be angry. Tell me and I'll teach her a lesson for you." He shot Gun Yanji a stern look as he spoke. Gun Yanji lowered her head with a smile. She didn't look afraid at all. The 3 of them chatted and laughed as they entered the apartment building's elevator. The apartment Wen Shuyi had booked for them was on the 5th floor. The 2 apartments were at one end of the hallway. Gun Yanji and Yin Shixiang pushed their suitcases inside. They were quite satisfied with the size of the apartment. Although it had 2 bedrooms and a living room, The living area was 150 square meters. It was very spacious. The first thing Yin Shixiang did after putting down their luggage was take out the anti-infrared device. He searched the entire apartment from inside to outside. He didn't miss a single corner, including the wall closets, bathroom cupboards, and every nook and cranny under the bed. He didn't expect to find at least 5 hidden cameras. We can't live here. Yin Shixiang took a hammer and smashed the cameras one by one. Go find the apartment manager and tell them to change rooms for us. Gu Nianji quickly agreed and went to the manager downstairs to ask for a new room. The apartment manager in the United States was reluctant at first, until Gu Nianji placed the 2 broken cameras on her desk and said in English, "We just found these in the room we booked. Just based on this, I can sue your apartment until it goes bankrupt." The manager's expression changed. She immediately stood up and said, "I can guarantee that we definitely didn't install such things here. I'm afraid someone framed us. I don't know if it was framed or not, but if you want to keep the peace, fine. Get me another apartment first. I'll pick my own." Gu Nianji was very stubborn. Americans were like that. They were unforgiving when they were in the right. If you were polite to her, she would think you were afraid of her and wouldn't take you seriously. It was fine as long as you didn't make a scene. Gu Nianji's voice was calm, but her attitude and tone were very firm. The apartment manager instantly became a warm-hearted good citizen. She personally took Gu Nianji to choose an apartment. Because the apartment building was close to Harvard University, it was full most of the time. There were empty apartments now because a group of students had graduated during the summer break. The new students hadn't enrolled yet, so there were a few empty apartments for Gu Nianji to choose from. Gu Nianji called Yin Shixiang over. The 2 of them quietly took the detector and slowly walked around the empty apartment. Finally, they chose a 2-bedroom apartment on the 6th floor facing south. There were no hidden cameras in the apartment. In fact, other than the apartment when Shui had booked for them, none of the other apartments they had looked at had such crooked methods. Gu Nianji didn't stand on ceremony. She said to the manager, "I'll take this one. Put the bill on that apartment's account." "No problem. The rent for these 2 apartments is the same. You can change them freely." The manager smiled like a flower and was very easy to talk to. After a busy afternoon, Gu Nianji and Yin Shixiang finally settled in the new furnished apartment on the 6th floor. It was the 3rd watch. It was the end of the month. She had to remind everyone about their monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 111. In the evening, when Shui drove over to pick them up for dinner, Yin Shixiang didn't go. He didn't want to interact too much with Gu Nianji's teachers and classmates, so he excused himself to visit a friend and asked Gu Nianji to go with Brother Huang. When they got into the car, when Shui asked, "Nianji, where's your guardian? Ask him to come with us." "No, he's busy too. He's been greeting all his friends the moment he arrived in America. He's much more popular than me." Gu Nianji pursed her lips into a smile as she placed the gift box by her feet. Brother Huang slapped his head when he saw it. "Oh my, I forgot to bring the gift. Can you wait for me? I'll go up and get it." When Shui had already started the car. "No need, let's go eat first. There's no rush for the gift." Gu Nianji and Brother Huang sat in the back and curiously studied the summer scenery of Boston's suburbs. It was close to evening, but the temperature wasn't high at all. A gentle breeze blew and the roadside was lined with green trees. There were grass, vines, and colorful flowers everywhere. They took a small road and didn't go on the highway, so there were no windows. When the wind blew in, they could even smell the faint scent of flowers and the scent of the summer sun. The magnificent sunset glow shone on the horizon, filling the sky with a fragrance of beautiful purples and beautiful reds. Gu Nianji took a deep breath and closed her eyes to enjoy the fresh air and the fragrance of the flowers. She relaxed completely. When Shui took them to an Italian convenience restaurant, Four Seasons, the United States didn't have its own specialties. Of course, unless you considered hot dogs and barbecue as part of the cuisine, high-end American restaurants were all French or Italian. British cuisine was considered a dark cuisine in the United States, so it wasn't classy. However, although Four Seasons was Italian, it wasn't a high-end restaurant. It was just a regular chain restaurant. Its most prominent feature was that it could be found everywhere, but it was a little more classy than fast food restaurants. When they entered, Hijichu was already sitting inside. Their seat was by the window in the hall. It was a small table for 4 and didn't have a private room. There were 2 rows of double chairs facing each other with a rectangular dining table in the middle. Hijichu wore a light blue shirt that fit perfectly, and his black trousers were perfectly straight without a single crease. One arm rested leisurely on the dining table, the cuffs rolled up, revealing the platinum Patek Philippe watch on his arm. Gu Nianji's sharp eyes caught the words written on the platinum dial. This was the famous Patek Philippe Platinum Geneva Observatory watch. And it was a custom-made model for He Jichu. TSK, this watch alone is worth at least $10 million US. So Professor He had the habit of carrying his entire fortune with him? Gu Nianji smiled as she sat down across from He Jichu. She secretly thought that if one of the kidnappers was blind enough to steal He Jichu's watch, then that would be a real shame. He Jichu's other arm rested on the back of the soft chair. His expression was indifferent, but his peach blossom eyes gently looked up and glanced over. The long ends of his eyes were like hooks, and it made people's hearts pound. What are you laughing at? He Jichu raised a brow at Gu Nianji and turned to look at Brother Huang. You sit next to her. Only then did Brother Huang dare to sit down. He was much more polite than Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji was a little embarrassed. Why did he have to wait for a teacher to assign him a seat in the restaurant? Did he sit down too early? When Shuyi smiled as she sat down next to He Jichu. He Jichu nonchalantly withdrew his arm from the back of the soft two-seater chair and tossed the menu to Gu Nianji and Brother Huang. You guys order whatever you want. A waiter in a white uniform was already waiting by the side with a notebook and a ballpoint pen in his hand. Gu Nianji casually glanced at the menu. She had never tried any of them before. She closed the menu and looked at He Jichu with sparkling eyes. Professor He, just order whatever you think is good. I'm not picky. When Shuyi snickered. Nianji, you're making things difficult for Professor He. I'm usually the one who orders Professor He's dishes. Philly beef rolls, no onions, assorted Mediterranean seafood plate, crab soup. Give me 2 of each, for me and the lady sitting across from me. He Jichu was already ordering before when Shuyi could finish her sentence. When Shuyi immediately blushed and added sheepishly, but Nianji, you're different. Professor He has always treated you differently. How can you say that? Gu Nianji smiled as she took out the gift box she had prepared. Of course it's because Professor He cares so much for his students. That's why everyone fights to be his student, right? Professor He? Sweat beaded on Brother Huang's forehead. This Gu Nianji really had the guts to flatter him in front of his face. She had really gotten to him. He quickly chimed in, that's right. Professor He's postgraduate exam has always been the most difficult in our school. It has the highest scores. He Jichu looked at Gu Nianji and picked up the menu. He also ordered an appetizer, main course and side dishes for Brother Huang. He also ordered a cheesecake for dessert. Before the dishes were served, he also ordered a bottle of red wine to whet everyone's appetite. When Shuyi only ordered a Caesar salad for herself. I'm on a diet. When Shuyi winked at Gu Nianji with a smile. I want to be as thin as Nianji too. Gu Nianji smiled at her. I don't like it when people copy me. She picked up the gift box by her feet and presented it to He Jichu with both hands. Professor He, this is a gift for you. The gift box was sapphire blue. It was very large and had a light blue bow tied into it. He Jichu accepted it and placed it next to Wen Shuyi for her to put away. Gu Nianji disagreed. She narrowed her eyes and stopped him. Professor He, why don't you open it? I heard that in American etiquette, gifts have to be opened in person to show courtesy. Is that so? He Jichu glanced at her with a slight frown. You know a lot. Have you been to America before? No. But in the age of the internet, it's common to travel around the world without leaving home. Gu Nianji didn't mind at all. She insisted that He Jichu open the gift box. He Jichu had no choice but to indicate to Wen Shuyi. Open it. Wen Shuyi shook her head internally. She gently twisted her fingers to untie the bow and unwrap the wrapping paper. She then opened the lid of the gift box. She froze the moment she saw what was inside. Inside the gift box were 2 smashed cameras. The pitch-black cameras lay in the pristine white gift box. The contrast was so stark that it made one's hair stand on end. What gift is this? He Jichu looked at Gu Nianji in confusion. You're giving me smashed cameras? Gu Nianji lifted her chin at Wen Shuyi. You'll have to ask teaching assistant Wen about that. I found these 2 cameras in the apartment that teaching assistant Wen booked for me. This was the first watch. Today was the 4th watch. Asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. The second watch at 1 p.m. was 2,000 monthly votes. The third watch at 6 p.m. was 3,000 monthly votes. The fourth watch at 8 p.m. was 2,100 monthly votes. It was Monday. Recommendation votes were very important. Chapter 112. Hijichu's gaze immediately turned cold, not only cold but also sinister. He turned to look at Wen Shuyi. Is that so? What does this have to do with you? When Shuyi's face paled, she used all her strength to stop herself from trembling. Gun Yanji had surprised her yet again. She had managed to find such a well-hidden camera. But when Shuyi knew she couldn't back down now or else she would be doomed forever. When Shuyi was no ordinary person, she quickly calmed down after being caught off guard by Gun Yanji. She closed the gift box calmly and smiled at Hijichu. Professor He, I can explain to you when we get back. This is a misunderstanding. She emphasized the word misunderstanding, so much so that it seemed like she really had a special reason. Gun Yanji was unconvinced. She rested her chin on her hands and leaned forward on the dining table with a smile. What misunderstanding? Shouldn't teaching assistant when explained to me the person in question? As for Professor He, you'll say it eventually anyway, so let's talk now. She had only been testing the waters, and although she knew that Wen Shuyi was most likely the culprit, there was also a small possibility that someone else had done it. But Wen Shuyi's reaction confirmed Gun Yanji's suspicions. Generally speaking, it was impossible to be wrong about something with a high probability. Brother Huang was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. He looked at the stubborn Gun Yanji, then at the helpless Wen Shuyi, and suddenly stood up. I need to go to the bathroom. He then fled. Gun Yanji knew that Brother Huang didn't want to get involved, and she didn't blame him. She would be grateful if he didn't join Wen Shuyi in trampling on her. She couldn't expect everyone to be on her side unconditionally like Brother Xiong and Brother Zhe, could they? Only the three of them were left at the dining table. Wen Shuyi smiled. Yanji, if I said I didn't have any ill intentions, would you believe me? Aha, I'll believe you just because you say so? Why should I? Are you stupid? Law students always look for evidence, and when you're caught red-handed, you can't really be innocent just because you say you're not guilty. So don't try to trick me. Gun Yanji tilted her head to look at Wen Shuyi with a smile, but the corner of her eye fell on Hijichu. Hijichu was silent for a moment before pouring a glass of lemonade for Gun Yanji and a glass of red wine for Brother Huang. He said nonchalantly, You and little Huang just arrived and spent 2 days getting used to the time difference. Go to class on Monday. When Goldie comes back, tell him. Gun Yanji didn't expect Hijichu to keep quiet about it. She raised her eyebrows and looked at Hijichu thoughtfully. Her large eyes looked at Wen Shuyi, who was holding a goblet of red wine. She was a bit indignant and was about to argue with Hijichu. Suddenly, someone kicked her lightly under the table. Although it didn't hurt at all, it gave her a fright. Gun Yanji instinctively yelped and bent down to rub her ankle. She happened to see Hijichu's black leather shoes slowly shrink back. The person who kicked her was Professor He? Screech. There was no justice in this world. Was Professor He trying to take sides? Was he siding with his teaching assistant? Gun Yanji's impression of Hijichu fell to rock bottom. She had always thought Hijichu was a very principled and reasonable professor. Why did he turn against her the moment he arrived in America? It must be because the feng shui in America was bad. Yanji, what's wrong? Wen Shuyi immediately looked under the table, but she didn't see Hijichu's foot shrink back. She thought Gun Yanji had been too excited and knocked her foot down. The table is a bit cramped. Be careful. Gun Yanji bent down and glared at Hijichu's leather shoes under the table. She straightened up and said angrily, I was careless. I'm sorry. Hijichu's expression remained impassive as he wiped the corner of his mouth with a napkin and put it back on the table. He picked up his wine glass. Here, Yanji. I hope you have a good time in America for the next 6 months. Whether or not I can have a good time is up to teaching assistant Wen, not me. Gun Yanji couldn't stand Hijichu's protective behavior. Professor He, I don't want this to happen again and again. I want to request a restraining order from Professor He. Teaching assistant Wen must stay away from anything that has to do with me. Gun Yanji, don't be so shameless. Wen Shuyi immediately retorted. Her tone was no longer polite. What do you mean by this? You're just a student. I'm not only Professor He's teaching assistant but also an associate professor at Harvard University. I'll be teaching 2 of your classes during the 2 months you're at Harvard Law School. Don't you want to get credits? If you don't get credits, you'll be violating the US F1 student visa rules. It's illegal and you'll be deported. I won't get any credits. Just deport me. Gun Yanji was also angry. She put the lemonade on the table. Professor He, I want to go back. If teaching assistant Wen treats me like this, I'll be in deep trouble for the next 6 months. It's not that I can't endure hardship, but I don't want to be wronged. Her eyes reddened involuntarily when she said the word wronged. If Uncle Huo was the one who made her suffer, then she could tolerate it. But who was Wen Shui? Why should he be held back by her? Tears welled up in Gu Nianji's inky eyes. A faint blush appeared at the corners of her slightly tilted eyes. It was as if she had applied rouge. He Jichu closed his eyes helplessly. He rubbed the space between his brows. His clear voice was tinged with resignation. I understand. I'll personally teach all of your classes. Professor He? When Shui was shocked, she dropped the napkin in her hand. I knew Professor He was the most reasonable person. Gu Nianji beamed with joy. She immediately picked up the glass of red wine and poured Hijichu a shallow glass. Professor He, a toast. Hijichu accepted the glass but still chastised Gu Nianji. But your attitude towards teaching assistant 1 is also problematic. Apologize to her, Gu Nianji knew when to stop and immediately followed Wen Shui's advice. She smiled and poured Wen Shui a glass of red wine as well. Teaching assistant 1, please don't make things difficult for me anymore. I'm just a student. How can I fight against a local tyrant like you? Don't you think so? Wen Shui glared at Gu Nianji. No amount of self-restraint could suppress the surging hatred in her heart. You flatter me. Your student is much better than the professor. She didn't drink the wine Gu Nianji poured for her. She turned to look at Hijichu. Her eyes were also red. Professor He, I just remembered that I still have papers to grade. I won't be joining you for dinner today. Teaching assistant 1, you're leaving already? But what about the salad you just ordered? We can't waste food. We'll be struck by lightning if we waste food. Gu Nianji blinked rapidly. Wen Shui thought her expression was asking for a beating. It won't go to waste. I'll have the waiter pack it up for me. You guys eat slowly. Professor He will drive you back when you're done. Wen Shui almost ran away. She was afraid that if she stayed any longer, she wouldn't be able to stop herself from slapping Gu Nianji's face. Why was that face so infuriating? She really didn't expect Gu Nianji to be this kind of person. She had planned for Gu Nianji out of goodwill, but Gu Nianji had taken it all for granted. She didn't know what was so good about Gu Nianji that even someone as cold and aloof as Professor He would give in to her over and over again. This was the second monthly pass of 2,000+ updates. Thank you, Ren Xiaoyao2722 for the Immortal Fate and the Peach Blossom fan yesterday. Thank you, Kitty, for the Peach Blossom fan yesterday. Thank you, AIG, for the Peach Blossom fan yesterday. Mwah. The third monthly pass of 6 p.m. The fourth monthly pass of 2,100+ updates. Was Monday. Recommendation votes were very important. Chapter 113. After Wen Shui angrily left the table, only Gu Nianji and Hijichu were left at the table of 4, facing each other. Hijichu remained silent as he leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. He scrutinized Gu Nianji. Why do you like to pick a fight with teaching assistant 1? Professor He, she was the one picking a fight with me. How can you turn the tables on her? Gu Nianji couldn't take it anymore. Or do you think it's normal to install cameras in a student's apartment? Hijichu glanced at the gift box Wen Shui had forgotten to take with her. He mused, I'll find out what the reason is. But before that. Hijichu looked at Gu Nianji expressionlessly, his voice even colder. You shouldn't show your emotions. To be a good lawyer, the first thing you need is self-control. You need to be able to control your emotions in any situation. You've lowered my opinion of you by a few notches. Gu Nianji pursed her lips and internally rolled her eyes. She kept a straight face. Thank you for your advice, Professor He. But I'm still a student. I can't change my expression as quickly as teaching assistant 1, nor can I be as indifferent as Professor He. But I will work hard to learn and strive to surpass my teacher in the future. Hijichu couldn't help smiling when he saw Gu Nianji's angry expression. He shook his head. Okay, as long as you remember. No matter what, it's wrong to install cameras in private apartments. It has nothing to do with emotions. Gu Nianji refused to let Wen Shui off the hook because she could tell Wen Shui was targeting her. She didn't hold back. It was better to put their estrangement on the table than to pretend everything was fine and suffer in silence. This was the only way Wen Shui would restrain herself. The cost of quarreling with Gu Nianji was too high. If Wen Shui was a normal person, she would think twice about the cost-benefit ratio. She wouldn't easily pick on Gu Nianji again. Brother Huang, who had been hiding and patrolling in the distance, finally sauntered back when he saw Wen Shui leave. Hijichu and Gu Nianji didn't mention the incident again. After a while, the waiter brought the dishes they had ordered. Gu Nianji and Brother Huang ate, drank, chatted, and laughed. The atmosphere from earlier was quickly forgotten. Hijichu didn't eat much, but he drank a lot of red wine. His pale face was flushed, complementing his shimmering, sultry eyes. When he looks at you with rapt attention, his gaze is truly captivating. Gunyenji was full and smiled at Hijichu. Professor He, I didn't know you didn't eat onions either. The Philly beef wrap was supposed to be served with chopped onions. Hijichu raised an eyebrow. I don't eat onions. What's wrong? You don't eat onions either? Yeah, I don't like the smell of onions. They stink like hell. Gunyenji sniffled and took a sip of the lemonade with a look of disgust. She wasn't 18 yet and couldn't drink, so Hijichu didn't pour her any red wine. He only ordered lemon water for her. I don't like it either. Hijichu smiled faintly and quickly finished everything on his plate. Brother Huang could hold his liquor very well. He was a big drinker in the Wuxia Empire, so drinking red wine in the United States was a piece of cake. He excitedly talked about the projects he was working on in the Wuxia Empire and kept asking Hijichu for advice. Gunyenji saw Hijichu's frown deepen and couldn't help but smile. Hijichu probably had an American work habit of not discussing business during private time. Brother Huang must have violated Hijichu's taboo by taking up Professor He's precious private time to discuss business. Little Huang, I just told Nyenji that you guys should rest for 2 days to get over the jet lag and go back to school on Monday. I'll email you the class schedule when I get back. Hijichu interrupted Brother Huang's rambling and set down his knife and fork to wipe his mouth with a white napkin. Brother Huang saw that Hijichu had finished his food and quickly finished it as well. Gunyenji ate the slowest but didn't rush to finish. Instead, she asked the waiter to pack it up for her. She wanted to take it home for supper. Hijichu drove them back to the apartment in his Mercedes. On the way back, Gunyenji and Brother Huang chatted and laughed. The two of them made the atmosphere lively. Although Hijichu didn't say much, he didn't make the conversation awkward. Every now and then, he interjected and encouraged Brother Huang to continue expressing his opinions on the Sino-American legal system. When they arrived at the apartment, Hijichu didn't get out of the car. He only waved at them and drove away. Gunyenji covered her cheeks and rolled her eyes at Brother Huang. Brother Huang, why do you have to keep talking? I'm so tired. Brother Huang smiled wryly. Nyenji, aren't you afraid of Professor He? His face darkened. My legs are trembling. What? Is he that scary? Gunyenji was speechless. Brother Huang really didn't know the world. No matter how scary Professor He was, could he be as scary as Uncle Hua? But if she wasn't even afraid of Uncle Hua, why would she be afraid of Professor He? Gunyenji thought she was amazing and wanted to give herself a thumbs up. The two of them went to the apartment elevator and returned to their respective rooms. Brother Huang was smart enough not to ask Gunyenji about the cameras. His instincts told him that this was a minefield. It could be big or small, and it was best for a passerby like him to pretend he didn't know anything. Otherwise, when the gods fought, the little devil would suffer. He couldn't afford to provoke them, but he could hide. Yin Shixiang breathed a sigh of relief when Gunyenji returned to her apartment. You're back? Gunyenji changed into slippers at the door. She said listlessly, I lost. Brother Xiong, you're good. Yeah, $100. Yin Shixiang extended his hand to her. I told you to take the cameras. Although you can scare teaching assistant 1, Professor He won't punish her in front of you. That was why he only allowed Gunyenji to take 2 cameras and kept the other 3 from her. The reason was simple, the Special Operations Forces were used to holding back. They never revealed all of their cards. Taking out only 2 cameras and taking out all 5 gave Wenshui a different kind of shock. Not only did he not punish her, he didn't even mention a word about it. Gunyenji said indignantly, that's so surprising. I always thought he was an upright and plain-spoken person. Yin Shixiang patted her head unceremoniously. Go wash up and sleep. How old are you? How many people do you know? If you bet with me, I'll make you lose half a year's worth of living expenses. Got it. Gunyenji quickly dodged. I'm going to shower. Good night, Brother Xiong. Their apartment had 2 bedrooms, both with their own bathrooms. They were on either side of the living room, so it was very convenient to live together. Hijichu drove back to his apartment. When Shui was already waiting at the door. Hijichu lived in a single-family house. It was as big as a castle. There were 2 white marble pillars in front of the door. It looked very grand and majestic. You better have a very good reason. Otherwise I'll send you home right now. Hijichu looked straight ahead as he walked up the steps. His expression was very cold. It was the 3rd watch. The 4th watch at 8 p.m. The monthly tickets were 2,100. It was Monday, so recommendation tickets were very important. Chapter 114. When Shuyi's temper tantrum today was much more effective than she had imagined. She had actually calmed down after leaving the restaurant. However, she didn't like seeing Gu Nianji's smug face. She looked like she deserved a beating. Professor He, I really have a reason for this. I was planning to tell you about it today. Even if she didn't say it, I would have. When Shuyi jogged after him, Yijichu took off his jacket and tossed it aside. When Shuyi caught the coat neatly and hung it in the closet. When she walked into the living room, she saw Yijichu sitting upright on the red velvet sofa in the living room. His clear and bright eyes were reflected in a sea of pink, making him look extremely beautiful. When Shuyi's heart pounded, she walked over slowly and stood not far from Yijichu. She clasped her hands and said respectfully, Professor He, it's like this. Although Nianji isn't 18 yet, she's already 17. She'll be 18 in the second half of the year. And her guardian is actually a strong man. Aren't you worried? Yijichu's eyes flashed. His drunken gaze shifted to Wen Shuyi's face. You're saying you're worried that Nianji's guardian will do something to her? If that was the reason, it wasn't unacceptable. However, he didn't like people knowing what he was thinking. Yijichu looked down and shook his finger. It's no use. That reason doesn't hold water. If you're worried about this problem, you can rent 2 apartments and let them live separately. Why go through the trouble of installing cameras in the house? Professor He, I didn't think it through. It won't happen again. When Shuyi's heart tightened, she couldn't understand what Yijichu was thinking. Yijichu stood up from the sofa. His posture was as straight as a pine tree. He clasped his hands behind his back. You've made a huge mistake. Go back and stay for 2 months. Come back when the Congress session is over. He still wanted to kick her out, when Shuyi couldn't keep up the bitter smile on her face. She wanted to beg for mercy, but when she saw Yijichu's cold expression, she couldn't utter a single word. In the end, she wasn't as thick-skinned as Gu Nianji. That little orphan girl's face-changing technique was simply too amazing. Ordinary people weren't her match. To be able to curry favor with those in power and have no moral integrity, he must have led a miserable life. If not, he wouldn't be able to survive. When Shuyi thought maliciously, but she quickly stopped herself. She couldn't do this. Yijichu didn't like evil women? Yes, Professor He. I'll go see my parents now. When Shuyi glanced cautiously at Yijichu, Yijichu turned and went upstairs without replying. When Shuyi stared blankly at the empty stairs. When she thought of her home, she couldn't help but hug her arms. Her parents were only the He family's gardeners. She had been chosen to be by Yijichu's side to take care of him and assist him because of her hard work and outstanding abilities. If she went back like this and the family found out that she had made a mistake in front of Yijichu, she would lose all face. When Shuyi gritted her teeth and chased after him, Yijichu was just about to open the door to his bedroom. Professor He. When Shuyi hurriedly called out to him, Do you have a message for Mr. He? Yijichu didn't turn around. His slender fingers paused on the bedroom doorknob. His eyes shifted as his voice lowered. See how he's doing. Tell him I'm fine. Yes, Professor He. When Shuyi sighed in relief. With Yijichu's order, she could officially return to her hometown to see her family and friends. Everyone would know that she was following Yijichu's orders to visit Mr. He, who was also Yijichu's father. When Gu Nianji and Brother Huang went to Harvard Law School 2 days later, they discovered that Assistant Professor Wen had already gone on vacation. Brother Huang stared at his schedule for a long time. He looked at Gu Nianji and pointed to the schedule, which stated that Assistant Professor Wen had gone on vacation. He pondered. Nianji, this isn't a coincidence, is it? How would I know? Gu Nianji's eyes widened innocently. I'm not Assistant Professor Wen. If you want to know why, ask her. You have her email and phone number. Brother Huang glared at Gu Nianji. This young lady was truly formidable. She was quite good at lying through her teeth. Gu Nianji glared back at him, unwilling to back down. Comparing the size of their eyes? Who's afraid of who? At that moment, the bell rang in the hallway. Students with backpacks began searching for their classrooms in groups of 2s and 3s. Gu Nianji and Brother Huang were walking in completely different directions. Brother Huang called out to Gu Nianji in surprise. You're having a different class from me? Gu Nianji winked at him with a smile. Of course it's different. Brother Huang is a second-year PhD student. He'll be a third year soon. As for me, I haven't even enrolled as a master's student yet. Why would I be having the same class as Brother Huang? I don't even understand Brother Huang's class. Brother Huang was overjoyed at her words. Of course not. You're so smart you'll catch up in no time. Okay, I've got to go to class. See you later. Gu Nianji waved at him and wiped the sweat from her forehead. She walked towards Hijichu's office. She was too embarrassed to take out her class schedule just now. The class location was listed as Room 409, Office of He. She couldn't imagine Brother Huang's face when he saw the schedule. Gu Nianji knocked lightly on the door when she arrived at Hijichu's office. "Come in." Hijichu's crisp voice called out from inside. Gu Nianji pushed the door open and bowed with a smile. "Professor He." "Coming." Hijichu picked up his laptop. "Let's go to room 305. We're having a class discussion today." So she still had to go to class. Gu Nianji couldn't help but roll her eyes internally. Then why didn't he write down the room number on the schedule? She could have just gone there. Hijichu seemed to know what she was thinking. He said dryly, "I don't have much time for class. This class discussion was decided at the last minute. I wanted you to meet your classmates." He paused before continuing, "They're all interns at the U.S. Congress, although they're not my students." Gu Nianji understood. They were the students of other professors. These people would be her colleagues for the next 6 months. She had to get to know them as soon as possible. She flashed a cute smile and followed Hijichu to room 305. "Oh, there's an Asian beauty. Beauty, do you have a boyfriend? Do you want to sit with me and we can discuss this important question?" A tall, blonde, blue-eyed boy whistled at Gu Nianji and gave up the seat next to him. "Alan hit on a girl in class. 10 points deducted." Hijichu turned on his computer without mercy and placed a bet on Alan's name. "Ah, Professor He, I was wrong. I really was wrong. I won't do it again." Alan screamed and almost fell off his seat. Gu Nianji covered her mouth and couldn't help giggling. Alan looked up from his desk and was dazzled by Gu Nianji's smile. "Beauty, sit with me. Look at me, I'm willing to lose 10 points for you." Gu Nianji shook her head and said in standard English with a London accent, "You deserted it." Then she sat in the first row, facing Hijichu's podium. A smile flashed across Hijichu's cool face as he began to assign the topic for discussion. After staying in the apartment for a few days, Yin Shixiang began to carry his backpack and wander around the Harvard campus. There were no walls around the university, so there were many tourists like him, so he didn't attract much attention. He had equipment in his backpack to search for radio and electromagnetic signals. This was his professional habit. This was the monthly ticket for the 4th chapter, 2,100 plus chapters. It was Monday, so recommendation tickets were very important. Chapter 115. Yin Shixiang turned right from Cambridge Street into the Harvard campus and walked north along the Massachusetts Avenue until he reached the law school campus where Gu Nianji was attending classes. He walked around the law school building, but the equipment in his backpack didn't show any abnormalities, which meant it was a normal teaching area. Law students relied on their own intelligence to do whatever they wanted, unlike other science students who had to rely on certain equipment. Yin Shixiang stood on the avenue near the law school and took a few selfies with his phone. Of course, he chose a certain angle to record the location of the place. There were too many people taking photos there, and everyone was holding a selfie stick. A plain selfie taker like Yin Shixiang was the minority. He smiled and pushed his sunglasses up the bridge of his nose. Looking at the map in his hand, he discovered that the east side of the law school was Harvard's famous School of Electronic Engineering campus. Yin Shixiang's heart skipped a beat as he slowly walked towards the School of Electronic Engineering. He still looked like a tourist with an iPhone cable plugged into his ear. He looked like he was listening to music and wore sunglasses, so it was impossible to see where he was looking. Yin Shixiang's attention was completely focused on his headphones from the moment he walked into the School of Electronic Engineering. This was because his earphones were actually connected to his device, and it was not a real iPhone earphone cable. It was a modified one, and it only looked like an iPhone. Not long after, the sound of complex electric currents came from his headphones, sizzling and rhythmic ticking. This wasn't a normal sound, it was the sound of electromagnetic and radio signals. The special equipment in his backpack could capture sounds that these people couldn't hear with their ears and also had the ability to analyze and record. Yin Shixiang stood at the entrance of the School of Electronic Engineering for a while but didn't walk too close. He didn't know what was there. With Harvard status, there might be some special detection equipment here. As far as he knew, several famous universities in the United States had close technical cooperation with the U.S. military. This was the School of Electronic Engineering, so it was normal to have these messy electromagnetic signals. Yin Shixiang stood there for a while and took a few selfies before leaving with a smile. It was already evening when he returned home. Gu Nianji had returned a long time ago and was waiting for him to come back for dinner. Brother Xiong, I bought a box of pizza. Come and eat. Gu Nianji didn't know how to cook and had never learned to cook. Of course she didn't need to. When she was with Hua Xiaoheng at the Special Operations Forces base, there was a special cafeteria and orderlies cooking. Later on, when he went to see university, there were also a variety of school cafeterias and off-campus restaurants. At most, she could cook a bowl of instant noodles and put 2 eggs in it. Yin Shixiang looked at the shiny white Philly steak pizza and really lost his appetite. He put down his backpack and went to the bathroom to wash his face and dry his hands. When he came out, he said to Gu Nianji, "Don't eat that stuff. It's not nice and makes you fat. Come, Brother Xiong will show you our skills and show you how versatile we are." Gu Nianji clapped her hands in welcome. "Wonderful, wonderful. Brother Xiong, do you need an apron? I have 2 beautiful aprons. My roommate gave it to me." "Bring it." Yin Shixiang pretended to be a master chef and opened the fridge to take out some beef to defrost. There weren't many vegetables in the fridge, so he used a few colored peppers to make some sliced beef with colored peppers and mixed it with shredded tofu, cucumber and egg rind. He also stir-fried some shredded potatoes with vinegar sauce and added a bowl of seaweed shrimp and egg drop soup. Gu Nianji couldn't help but drool at the smell and ran around to help Yin Shixiang do the chores. She listened to his instructions and set the dishes on the table. She also opened a bottle of champagne to celebrate their first day in the new house. Yin Shixiang only spent half an hour to finish cooking. When he sat down to eat, he sighed. "Actually, my cooking skills are average. Hua Xiao's is the real deal. He's a master." "What?" Gu Nianji had just put a piece of sliced beef with colored peppers into her mouth when she heard that Uncle Hua knew how to cook. She was so shocked that she choked and flushed. She coughed and couldn't speak. Yin Shixiang hurriedly came over and hit her back with all his might. Only then did he manage to knock the damn piece of beef out. Gu Nianji rinsed her mouth with a glass of water and stammered, "Brother Xiong, are you serious? Uncle Hua really knows how to cook." "Of course, who in our department doesn't know how to cook? It's a necessary skill." Yin Shixiang didn't elaborate. This was because they often went on field missions, especially in the wilderness of foreign countries. At times like this, knowing how to cook according to local conditions was a necessary survival skill. Everyone in the Special Operations Forces was multi-talented, so cooking wasn't even worth mentioning. Gu Nianji pouted. "I've never eaten Uncle Hua's cooking before." She was really at a disadvantage, wasn't she? Yin Shixiang scooped himself another bowl of rice and glanced at her indignant face. "You've never gone on a mission with us. Why should we cook for you? Think about it, when we were there, who cooked at home?" "That's true." Gu Nianji nodded thoughtfully. "It seems like you people are lazy when it's not necessary." "Hey, what were you saying? How is this called being lazy when it's not necessary?" Yin Shixiang nearly snorted through his nostrils. "This is called using all means to preserve energy and not making any unnecessary sacrifices or wastage. It's the same with cooking. How degrading is it for a man to cook? Even if he knew how to cook, he wouldn't tell you." Gu Nianji glanced at him and then at the food on the table. "What about this food?" "This is because I can't stand American food and don't want to go against my Huaxia taste buds." Yin Shixiang defended himself. "I can even roast voles. Do you want some?" "Huh. Gross, fine. Don't mention that stuff when you're eating." Gu Nianji quickly changed the subject and stopped asking about their cooking skills. Yin Shixiang chuckled inwardly, but when he thought about how he might have to cook for Gu Nianji in the next 6 months, he became extremely depressed. After eating, Gu Nianji took the initiative to put the dishes in the dishwasher and went back to her room to review and do her homework. Yin Shixiang thought about it for a while and opened the software connected to Zhao Liangzi and the others. He planned to report the current situation to them and also get Hua Xiaoheng's permission to train Gu Nianji to cook. He couldn't always cook for her, right? Gu Nianji had also grown up and was going to get married in the future. After that, she would have to learn how to cook. Yin Shixiang secretly praised himself for being quick-witted. However, he connected the software for nearly half an hour and there was no response from Zhao Liangzi. "What's going on? Is there a problem with the internet?" Yin Shixiang stared at his laptop for a while and turned to look in the direction of Gu Nianji's door. It was quiet on the other side. Gu Nianji was still quietly studying. If there really was no internet, Gu Nianji wouldn't be able to sit still. Yin Shixiang understood this online child who couldn't live without the internet. So the apartment's internet should be fine. Then why couldn't he contact Zhao Liangzi and the others? Yin Shixiang began to feel uneasy. He found Zhao Liangzi's email address and sent him an encrypted email. With a ding, the computer showed that the email had been successfully sent. However, on the other side there was no message to read. This is the first watch. Tentatively scheduled for the third watch today. Seeking recommendation votes and monthly votes. Second watch at 1 p.m., monthly votes 2,300 plus watch. Third watch at 6 p.m. As for the fourth watch at 8 p.m., I can't guarantee, of course, if the monthly votes and recommendation votes of my dear friends are very enthusiastic. Maybe I'll be on steroids and write another chapter. Chapter 116. It wasn't the first time such a sudden loss of communication had happened before. However, when it happened, the consequences were usually not good. Yin Shixiang grew even more anxious as he sat alone in his bedroom until dawn. Gu Nianji woke up in the morning to shower and quickly ate breakfast before heading off to class. Yin Shixiang waited until 10 in the morning for Zhao Liang's reply. In addition to encryption, the email had been written using the Special Ops special password. This was serious. Yin Shixiang rubbed his chin as he stared at Zhao Liang's email for a long time. At that moment, Gu Nianji was sitting in He Zhichu's office at Harvard Law School. He Zhichu had read the homework she had written yesterday and carefully corrected it before asking her to rewrite it. It was merely a draft law regarding funding principles for public schools, but he was asking her to rewrite it. Gu Nianji didn't think much of it, but didn't argue with He Zhichu directly. She nodded silently and returned to her seat. She turned on her computer and received the revised email from He Zhichu. He Zhichu's office was large and the bright, transparent windows took up half the wall. His desk was by the window in the deepest part of the room. On the opposite side of his desk was a small, exquisite desk with Gu Nianji's laptop on it. This was where she had been spending most of her time for the past 2 months. He Zhichu finished his email and picked up his briefcase and iPad. He said to Gu Nianji, who was immersed in rewriting the bill, "I'm going out for a meeting. I'll be back in 2 hours." Gu Nianji replied with an "oh," and saw He Zhichu's slender fingers close the office door from the corner of her eye. She sighed in relief and bit the end of her pen as she stared blankly at the blue sky and white clouds outside the window. Her thoughts involuntarily drifted to Hua Xiaoheng and wondered what Uncle Hua and the others were doing right now. Hua Xiaoheng and Zhao Liangzi, whom Gu Nianji and Yin Shixiang were worried about, were running through the Black Forest on the outskirts of Vienna, Austria. It was the height of summer, and the forest was a mixture of trees and grasslands. It was so green that it was almost black and stretched as far as the eye could see. Large trees stood in the depths of the forest, isolating it from the heat and sunlight of the outside world. Because the forest was too dense and flourishing, the depths of the forest were gloomy even in broad daylight. Hua Xiaoheng and Zhao Liangzi were both wearing army green camouflage uniforms. Their faces were also smeared with green and yellow paint, and they wore dark sunglasses that could filter light. They quickly jumped over small streams, crossed hills, and arrived at a towering tree deep in the forest. Did Tima disappear here? Hua Xiaoheng and Zhao Liangzi stood back to back as they scanned the forest. The signal shows that it's here. Zhao Liangzi only moved his lips. His voice was so soft that no one could hear him. Even Hua Xiaoheng, who was back to back with him, could only hear what he was saying through the earpiece. Hua Xiaoheng wore a pair of military leather gloves that exposed his fingers. He pushed the sunglasses up his nose and looked around. His sunglasses had a location recognition function and the ability to see through hidden objects. But when he looked around, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The marks on the ground showed that someone had been here before, but 2 days had passed and there were no new marks. Where did they go? Could they really fly? Zhao Liangzi muttered Gu Nianji's catchphrase to himself. Why didn't they go to the sky? Go to the sky? Hua Xiaoheng froze and suddenly looked up at the top of the tree. The dense foliage of the tree looked no different from other trees, but Hua Xiaoheng felt that there was something wrong with the top of the branches. He wanted to turn on the communicator, but as soon as his fingers touched it, he suddenly felt a sense of unease. It was this sense of danger that had helped him avoid traps countless times. You stay here, I'll go up and take a look. Hua Xiaoheng decided not to turn on the communicator and go up to take a look. He hugged the thick tree trunk and moved quickly to the top of the tree. Actually, he was only halfway up when he sighed in relief. A head poked out from the nest at the top of the tree and squawked at him like a partridge. Hua Xiaoheng faced the sunlight peeking through the gaps in the tree and made a few hand gestures. Soon, 2 figures poked out from the nest at the top of the tree. It was the members of Team A who had been missing for 2 days. Hua Xiao. When they saw Hua Xiao, they were so excited that they almost fell down. Hua Xiaoheng nodded at them and pointed under the tree. The two understood and slowly climbed down with Huashaoheng. Zhao Liangzi saw that the two missing teammates had been found and sighed deeply. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and punched one of the teammates on the shoulder. "You brat. Why were you hiding up there and not coming down? You scared us to death." Although casualties were inevitable during missions, it didn't mean they were used to the sadness and grief of losing their teammates. The two missing teammates supported each other and smiled bitterly at Huashaoheng and Zhao Liangzi. "Huashao, we didn't complete the mission and our legs were injured by the enemy." Huashaoheng and Zhao Liangzi finally saw the two limping over and saluting. "We'll talk when we get back." Huashaoheng patted their shoulders. "Let's take care of the wounds first." Zhao Liangzi opened his backpack and took out a temporary first aid kit. He tore open his partner's trouser leg and carefully examined it. "He was shot. We need to remove the bullet. It's been a long time and there might be pus inside. We need to operate immediately." Zhao Liangzi only did a simple cleaning. Huashaoheng took the scalpel. "I'll do it." They couldn't delay any longer. Gunshot wounds couldn't be treated at the medical center here because the doctors would be obligated to call the police. Although the Wuxia Imperial Embassy in Austria had doctors who could perform this kind of surgery, the rules and discipline of the Special Operations Forces dictated that once they left the country, they couldn't treat themselves as citizens of the Wuxia Empire. They had to cut off all ties with the Wuxia Empire, so of course they couldn't go to the Wuxia Imperial Embassy. Under these circumstances, they could only perform the surgery themselves. Zhao Liangzi carefully anesthetized their legs. Huashaoheng pursed his lips and put on sterile medical gloves expressionlessly. He held the scalpel in his hand and calmly opened the first teammate's wound. He scraped away the rotten flesh on the outside, and the bright knife light flashed as it rotated inside. It probed the hard shell of the bullet, and then rotated around the bullet's position. With a skillful push, the bullet popped out with a thud. Zhao Liangzi hurriedly covered the wound with an alcohol gauze and bandaged it tightly to prevent the smell of blood from leaking out. "It's your turn." Huashaoheng waved to the other person. Since the first surgery had gone smoothly, the second one went even faster. The entire process took less than 5 minutes, and the bullet and shrapnel from the leg had been gouged out. Zhao Liangzi also cleaned and bandaged the wound with great skill. This kind of field treatment was also a frequent practice for them. It was part of their job. The entire process took less than 15 minutes, but Huashaoheng already felt that they had been here for too long. "Let's get out of here immediately." He stood up and took the backpacks of the two members of Team A and carried them in his hands. Together with Zhao Liangzi, they each supported a wounded person and walked to the other side. They had already studied the entire direction and route of the forest before they came. Fortunately, the forest was too large and the leaves were dense, blocking out the sun. Electronic signals weren't very good, so they were able to avoid the enemy's pursuit and successfully leave this place. They returned to the SUV parked at the edge of the forest. As soon as the two team members entered, they relaxed and quickly began to snore. Zhao Liangzi quickly started the car and sped to the place where they were staying. Huashaoheng rested one elbow on the side of the car window, the back of his hand pressed against his chin. His gaze was deep and heavy as he looked at the rapidly passing scenery outside the car. His mind raced. Where exactly did it go wrong? The mission that went well in the Czech Republic was now difficult in Austria. It was as if their every move had been seen through, and they were always one step ahead of them to set up a trap. This was the second monthly pass of 2,200 plus 1. The third night pass was at 6 in the evening. As for the fourth night pass at 8 in the evening, I can't guarantee it today. Chapter 117. The four of them returned to the hotel where Huashaoheng and Zhao Liangzi were staying, but didn't go up. Zhao Liangzi went back alone to pack a simple luggage, paid the bill and left. They now needed to find a new place to stay. The four of them drove around Vienna, Austria, and finally found the most high-end Steigenberger Manor hotel to stay in. Of course they had changed their disguises. The oil paint on their faces had been washed off, and they had changed out of their camouflage clothes. Huashaoheng wore a well-fitting navy blue casual suit. He didn't button it up, revealing a light blue Egyptian cotton non-ironing shirt underneath. The loose casual pants he wore gave him the aura of a formal suit. He opened the car door and got out. Although he was wearing sunglasses, his extremely handsome face could still be seen. He was calm and composed. One hand was in his trouser pocket, and the other was casually hanging by his side. A Jaeger-LeCoultre Hybris Mechanica wristwatch was rolled up, revealing a Jaeger-LeCoultre Hybris Mechanica wristwatch. The complex and simple surface made this ultra-thin tourbillon wristwatch perfectly match Hua Xiaoheng's domineering and reserved aura. It was practically tailor-made. As soon as he walked to the hotel entrance, the hotel waiter saw the watch and his eyes lit up. He casually wore a watch worth over 10 million euros on his wrist. His net worth was almost the same as that of a European crown prince. Hua Xiaoheng casually took out his black card. Zhao Liangzi immediately acted as a translator and asked for 2 luxurious and bright suites in German. Their stance intimidated the entire hotel. The vice president of the hotel personally helped them with the check-in procedures and led them to the best luxurious and bright suite in the entire hotel. The bedroom overlooked the beautiful scenery of all of Vienna. Hua Xiaoheng didn't say a word during this time. His hands were in his trouser pockets, and he stood in front of the window looking at the azure sky. Zhao Liangzi busied himself, fully embodying the characteristics of a follower, and displaying his strengths as a personal secretary. The other 2 members with gunshot wounds in their legs wore sunglasses and stood motionlessly behind Hua Xiaoheng, pretending to be bodyguards. The 4 of them looked like the richest people from the East who had come to Vienna on business. The management of the Stegenberger Manor Hotel respectfully settled them down. After receiving a generous tip, they retreated with a smile on their faces. As soon as they left, Zhao Liangzi and the other 2 members of Team A immediately took out their infrared detectors and electronic signal detectors. They scanned the 2 suites from top to bottom, inside and out. After confirming that there were no cameras, bugs, or electromagnetic interference devices, they breathed a sigh of relief. Hua Xiaoheng nodded at the 2 injured members of Team A. You guys go rest. For the next few days your main task is to recuperate. The 2 members thanked him shamefully and went to stay in the suite next door. Zhao Liangzi set up the computer and various electronic devices and asked Hua Xiaoheng. Big Xiong couldn't contact us and was worried. I left in a hurry this morning, so I only had time to send him an encrypted email. Hua Xiaoheng nodded and sat down on the armchair in front of the window. The armchair was next to the beige curtains and was perfectly covered by them. Hua Xiaoheng sat there casually with his legs crossed and his hands folded on his knees. Although his posture was very relaxed, his aura was as steady as a mountain. Even if he didn't speak, he could still control the situation. To the entire 6th Military Region, Hua Xiaoheng was their backbone. In their hearts, Hua Xiaoheng was a towering, invincible peak. Therefore, no matter when, Hua Xiaoheng could not show any weakness as a human. Even in the most difficult times, in the darkest times, when there was no light at all, when everything around him was a blur, he had to be calm, steady, decisive, and ruthless. Zhao Liangzi knew that they had reached that moment again. Hua Xiaoheng looked up at him. Connect to Big Xiong. Connect? Zhao Liangzi was shocked. You didn't order us to not connect again 2 days ago? Did you order us not to connect again? Are we supposed to use the hotel's Wi-Fi? Hua Xiaoheng and the others had previously used the Empire's own Nandu satellite navigation system. Not only could this system locate any object on a global scale, but it also had the function of instant communication. When they were active abroad, they would directly use the Nandu system to locate them. They couldn't find the reason for the failure of this mission, so Hua Xiaoheng only ordered them to temporarily not contact the outside world. Therefore, not only did they not connect to the intranet provided by Austria, but they also didn't contact the Nandu system. The email that Zhao Liangzi had sent to Yin Shixiang had been sent by him specifically to an internet cafe to hack into one of the Austrian government servers. Hua Xiaoheng looked down and thought for a moment, let's use this hotel's Wi-Fi. We paid so much money, surely they wouldn't guarantee the security of the network at all, right? Zhao Liangzi looked at Hua Xiaoheng silently, then picked up the hotel's manual, found the Wi-Fi password and connected. He was used to being a hacker, so he went to the hotel's central control system out of habit and added a password to the network in his room. This way, even if the signal transmitted from here was hijacked halfway, it wouldn't be easily cracked. After connecting, Zhao Liangzi opened the exclusive communication software with Yin Shixiang. Not long after, they heard the beeping sound of the connection being connected. Yin Shixiang's face appeared on their laptop screen. Little Zay, are you guys okay? What happened? Yin Shixiang couldn't wait to ask as soon as the call connected. Zhao Liangzi smiled at him. We're fine, how could anything happen to us? You underestimate us too much. The two exchanged a few words, then Zhao Liangzi asked about Gu Nianji. Big Xiong, how's Nianji? Is she getting used to it? Didn't she say she was going to be an intern at the capital? Why is she attending classes at Harvard? About that, I'm not sure. I'll have to ask Nianji. Yin Shixiang poked his head out to look. Is Hua Xiao there? Do you want to talk to Nianji? Zhao Liangzi looked at Huo Xiaoheng inquiringly. Huo Xiaoheng was silent for a moment, then looked at his watch. What time is it in the United States now? It should be 1 in the afternoon? Zhao Liangzi checked the time difference. No need, Nianji needs to take an afternoon nap, Huo Xiaoheng said dryly, getting up to go to the bathroom. Yin Shixiang had already rushed to get Gu Nianji. 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 Huo Xiao. It's a video call from Huo Xiao. Gu Nianji had just fallen asleep when she heard Yin Shixiang knock on the door, calling for her to video call Huo Xiaoheng. She was wide awake, throwing off the thin blanket and running out wearing only a black t-shirt. The thigh-length black t-shirt hung loosely on her body, revealing a pair of long fair legs that glistened. It was the 3rd update. There was no 4th update today and the clock was ticking again at noon. I can't post on time anymore because no one can see it. It took me a long time to get it done. The editor suggested not to post on time in the future. But I have a time difference with everyone so I can't stay up all the time to post on time. So I want to discuss with everyone, can I post the 3rd or 4th update at the same time? It's not that I don't want to post on time, but the system is quite buggy right now, and this has happened a few times already. I really can't take it anymore. Chapter 118. Gu Nianji's face was full of joy. Her eyes, which had a natural contact lens effect, curved into 2 crescent moons as she smiled. She skipped into Yin Shixiang's room and pounced on the computer on his desk. Huo Xiaoheng put his hands in his pockets and looked straight ahead as he walked past Zhao Liangzi. He was about to take a shower. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of Gu Nianji stumbling towards the camera in a black t-shirt that reached her thighs on Zhao Liangzi's laptop screen. The beautiful face on the screen was like that of a beautiful girl from a manga, as well as those 2 long legs that were as white as crystal. The corners of his eyes twitched twice. Without hesitation, Huo Xiaoheng leaned forward and slashed at the back of Zhao Liangzi's neck with a steady, accurate and vicious hand chop. Zhao Liangzi was hit hard on the back of his neck. He lost his balance and fell to the ground with a loud thud. He fell flat on his face under the computer desk. Huo Xiaoheng stepped on Zhao Liangzi's back and leaned in front of the screen, gripping the mouse tightly. He zoomed in on the video and said in a low voice, "Nianji, go change. Who gave you permission to run out dressed like this? Big Xiong, turn around. Face the wall for an hour." Huo Xiaoheng's deep voice carried an indescribable magnetism through Yin Shixiang's computer microphone. His voice rose slightly at the end, like a hook that made Gu Nianji's heart sway in the air. She jumped and instinctively clutched her chest. "Uncle Hua, I just want to talk to you. I want to hear your voice. Can I turn off the camera?" "No need, go change. I'll wait for you." Huo Xiaoheng paused and tapped on the pause button. Gu Nianji hurriedly said, "You promised to wait for me?" I'll go change right now." She looked down at herself and her scalp went numb. How could she have forgotten about that? Her pajamas were the fish that escaped the net. Today she had been caught red-handed by the original owner. Gu Nianji's tiny face flushed. She turned to leave Yin Shixiang's room and quickly returned to her own room to change. Poor Yin Shixiang instinctively turned around when Huo Xiaoheng gave the order. He obediently faced the wall and stood in a military posture, not even daring to look sideways. When Gu Nianji returned to her room, she actually didn't have time to find something nice to change into. She hurriedly took off her black t-shirt and put on a tubular long-sleeved cotton nightgown. She then hurriedly ran back in her slippers. On the other side, Zhao Liangzi was immobilized by Huo Xiaoheng's foot. When he heard the computer go silent, he finally called out, "Huo Xiao, please have mercy on me and let me face the wall. My bones have been broken by you." Huo Xiaoheng looked down at him and retracted his leg. He lowered his body and sat on the soft computer chair that Zhao Liangzi had been sitting on. Zhao Liangzi crawled up from the floor and was about to speak when he saw Huo Xiaoheng glare at him. He quickly made a gesture of gouging his eyes and zipping his mouth, indicating that he did not see anything and would not say anything. Huo Xiaoheng felt annoyed and lightly clicked the mouse. "Go check if the network signal is safe. Check if the image just now has been cached. If it does, delete it from the entire network." Zhao Liangzi sighed and rubbed his back that was hurting from Huo Xiaoheng's stomp. He took out another laptop to check the image just now. The system did have a cache and so did the network. Zhao Liangzi glanced at Huo Xiaoheng and secretly bent over the laptop to look at the image with great curiosity. What image had caused Huo Xiaoheng to have such a strong reaction? When he saw that it was only Gu Nianji wearing a long t-shirt, he wanted to roll his eyes at the sky. Why are you rolling your eyes? Hua Xiaoheng's voice suddenly came from behind Zhao Liangzi. Zhao Liangzi did not expect Hua Xiaoheng to walk up behind him again. He forced himself to stop rolling his eyes. Screech. This high-difficulty movement was simply going to make one's eyeballs cramp. Hua Xiao, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. Nianji's outfit is very normal. All young girls dress like this. I've even seen shorts so short that half of their buttocks are exposed. What is she wearing? Zhao Liangzi rubbed his eyes that were about to cramp with dissatisfaction. Hua Xiaoheng pursed his lips and put his hands in his trouser pockets. He thought about it expressionlessly. This kind of outfit seemed pretty normal. Think about it. Whether it's a young girl from our country or a young girl from Europe, Nianji's outfit is really not excessive. Even if she wore this out for a walk, she would still look adorable. Zhao Liangzi pointed at the frozen image and analyzed it carefully. Look, only her collarbone is exposed. The bottom half of her thigh and calf are exposed. She's even wearing slippers. Even her toes aren't exposed. What's the big deal? Is it worth it for you to go through all this trouble for me and Big Xiong? She's just a young girl. She's not even a woman in Big Xiong's in my eyes. Are you unhappy with me? Hua Xiaoheng's voice was even deeper. It sounded like it was coming from his chest. If one leaned against his chest and listened carefully, they would almost hear echoes and resonance. Zhao Liangzi shuddered. He was so scared that he wanted to shrink back. He hugged his head and said, I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare. When Hua Xiaoheng had this kind of voice, it was when he was furious. Zhao Liangzi couldn't understand how he had crossed Hua Xiaoheng's bottom line. Hua Xiaoheng was actually angry at himself. He was angry at himself for reacting so strongly. She was wearing a simple long black t-shirt that wasn't revealing at all. Zhao Liangzi and Yin Shixiang couldn't even tell the gender of the t-shirt, but in Hua Xiaoheng's eyes, even though it was only a glimpse, it made his heart skip a few beats. Hua Xiaoheng turned around without batting an eyelid. He returned to the soft computer chair and sat down. He tilted his legs and silently held his breath. No one else was wrong. It seemed like he was the one at fault. He really shouldn't have. His self-control was extraordinary. In just a breath's time, Hua Xiaoheng had already returned to normal. He clicked lightly to open the video and said to Yin Shixiang, Big Xiong, come here. I have something to ask you. Yin Shixiang knew that this meant he would be released from solitary confinement. He let out a long sigh of relief and answered cheerfully. He ran over and flashed a big smile at the camera. He promised repeatedly, Don't worry, Hua Xiao. I'll take good care of Nianji. I won't let her go out dressed like that. Gu Nianji had already changed her clothes and was walking over. When she heard how Yin Shixiang had sold her out just to please Hua Xiaoheng, she angrily knocked his head from behind. Brother Xiong. What nonsense are you talking about? Why would I go out in pajamas? Yin Shixiang was very glad that Gu Nianji had come to his rescue. He chuckled and hugged his head as he scurried to the side. I was just giving an example. Don't take it seriously. I'll give it to you. You go first. Gu Nianji rolled her eyes at him and sat down in Yin Shixiang's seat. She looked up to see Hua Xiaoheng's despairingly handsome face on the screen. His usual silent and cold expression made her heart palpitate. It was all too familiar. She felt especially intimate and satisfied. She immediately flashed a cute smile at the camera and said in a sweet voice, Uncle Hua, I'm changing. Does it look good? Yes, it looks good. Hua Xiaoheng said casually. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi curled their lips at the same time. Damn it. How was that straight-up skirt that resembled a nun's beautiful? These two people should be attending ophthalmologists at the Imperial Military Hospital. This was the first update. The third update would be released at the same time. There was also the second update and the 2300 plus update. Then there was the third update. Asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes at the end of the month. Our monthly votes will be invalid if we don't vote. Hurry up and vote. Oh, __intersection. Oh. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.